Yo, what is going on, guys? Renekton here, today bringing you a new video, and as you can see on the screen right now, yes, in today's video, we're going to be doing a Renekton matchup tier list. Now, a lot of you have asked for this over the years, to do like some kind of matchup video or some kind of tier list. And obviously since then, I have made one of these technically. However, I figured why not try and re-go over it and just kind of like provide some new points and kind of just update that a little bit with what I find to be Renekton's good, bad matchups, challenging matchups, things you should avoid. Like, why not try and make a whole video around that and just kind of like talk about it, because I know you guys do like these videos where I just talk about Renekton related things. And on top of that too, in this video, I will also be trying to share some tips that I have on the matchups. I will be giving you my overall reasoning onto why I think a matchup is where it is, and I will also have some like build and runes on the screen for each matchup. So if you guys are obviously wondering, oh, what matchup do I take this? Well, if you don't want to look at my spreadsheet and you just want a video available, I will try and obviously fit that in within this video. So this is where, if you have any like matchup questions or anything like that, I highly recommend to check these out. But obviously, if you want further information that will obviously detail a lot more on these things, then by all means, check my spreadsheet. So let's go actually into the tiers of this tier list. So we have the very easy column for every super easy auto win style matchups for Renekton. We have an easy tab too, which obviously features matchups that are Renekton favored, but obviously do require some understanding into those matchups. Following on from that, we have the skill matchups, where obviously these are your medium scale 50-50 style matchups where obviously whoever is better will win. Now, I will say Renekton is probably favored in most of these matchups because I am a hard believer that Renekton does win every single matchup if you play it right. But obviously I will give my reasonings onto how you can win and how you can lose to within the champions in this column. Next, we have a challenging tab, which basically infers that it's a matchup where it can be kind of rated amongst like who's playing against it. Like, for instance, there are some matchups like, let's say even Teemo, right? I view it as a easy matchup, but a lot of people that are new to the game, or maybe they've even just got different opinions, like they think it's a harder matchup. So any matchup that's a little bit controversial, that needs a bit of understanding to explain why I might rate it there, will be in this column. So hopefully I can explain all those matchups there, and maybe I can, you know, help you guys as well in being able to beat these matchups. Following on from that, we do have a hard tab as well. So any matchups that are deemed not in Renekton's favor will be here. And obviously as well, just to cap out the tier list, we have an avoid tab. These are matchups where Renekton just cannot win. And now you can win these, but on paper, it is just not worth the effort of trying to play this matchup. So yeah, with all that said, let's get into the tier list. So I think the way I'll start it is, I will probably start from just picking random champions down here and just kind of put them in there. Now, I'm not going to put every champion, so you're not going to see Blitzcrank in this tier list, you're not going to see Bard or whoever the hell, right? Like, if you want to see all that, again, Renekton spreadsheet, it's on the screen right now. But in terms of this video, it is going to be top lane related, so obviously expect all your top lane champions here, and some slightly off meta picks too that you would expect to see as well. So yeah, the way I'm going to start it is probably from A to Z. So we're going to start off with Aatrox. Now, Aatrox is probably Renekton's skill matchup. Now, this matchup can go either way for Renekton. So for me, right, I've had a lot of mental blocks in the past of Aatrox, and with him getting like a lot of changes too over the past couple of years, and even like items too, those also give Aatrox an inherent buff. I would say it's probably reasonable to list Aatrox here, because this champion Renekton can beat, obviously. It is all about like just skill though, this matchup. Like, the better you are at Renekton, the easier it can be, but I think even a good Aatrox can always pose quite a threat towards Renekton. So let's explain the matchup a little bit. So Aatrox, a lot of it is about dodging his Qs. It's about trying to avoid his W, which you might use your E for that. You might obviously use your E to dodge his Qs. A lot of it is movement based though. So the better you are at your movements, like having good clicks, being able to click in and out, the sidestepping stuff, the better this matchup is going to feel. Now, obviously, there are some little other things too, like obviously avoiding Aatrox passive. That is a big thing in this matchup. Having some kind of healing reduction too, such as Ignite or even like an Executioner's, can be very good as well into him. And overall, you're just kind of like trying to play off of avoiding his sweet spots, trying to obviously fight when his ult's down, or trying to fight with your ultimate up. These are like the main aspects of being able to have an advantage over Aatrox in being able to beat him. Now, once Aatrox does get his Q maxed out, the matchup can feel a little bit more in his favor, because he can obviously spam a lot of his abilities. So again, a lot of it is just trying to win as hard as you can in the early early game, and then obviously trying to transfer your lead into the mid game. A lot of it then just becomes like helping your teammates and just being able to like try and prevent Aatrox from getting any resets for his ultimate. But yeah, overall, I would say this matchup perfectly encapsulates it being a skill matchup. And if you do want to see a video too on the Aatrox matchup, that is on the screen right now. It is still basically up to date, just a bit of item changes. But overall, I would say this matchup is reasonably rated here. And as long as you just don't obviously play into his kit, Renekton will have an easier time doing short combos. You know, playing runes like Conqueror, things like this can make Renekton feel a lot stronger as well and give him a lot more power. Now on the screen right now too, we will have a build that I'll be showing you, like just various builds that I think can be good in certain situations, and also the rune tree as well that I prefer to take. I don't think I'm really going to explain it here, but yeah, if I do, I guess. Cleaver is very good because the stats it gives you, it's very well rounded, and it can help you match Aatrox's overall spammy playstyle, as well as giving you armor shred, moon speed as well. All these stats perfectly play into Aatrox. Now, if you are dominating Aatrox, obviously Eclipse can be a lot better to use as well, because the shield blocks his damage, the raw AD and the cheapness of the item can be very great too. So that is also another thing that can be good. In terms of all items that are very good into him, Death Stance is also another great item, because the way Aatrox works is the more damage he deals, the more that you heal. The way Death Stance obviously works, you have this passive where you obviously take that 30% damage being dealt to you as a bleed over time, and obviously in that time you can remove that damage completely if you kill him, but you also will make Aatrox heal a lot less, making this a very superb item to build into him as well. Furthermore though, that is practically it when it comes to the Aatrox matchup. So again, if you want any more tips or anything like that, make sure to check out my videos and make sure to check out the spreadsheet. Now, the next matchup that I will pick here is Akali. Now, Akali is very interesting because while this champion does seem like a weak, you know, assassin style champion, she's actually a lot challenging than it actually is to play against. So now, I could put her here in challenging, but to be honest with you, I do think it's more or less a skill matchup. So Akali, obviously the main skill into this matchup is trying to avoid her passive procs. Level 1, trying to weave in and out of her Q range is very important because she gets like 2 Qs before she runs out of energy, and that can basically dictate a giant trade. So if Akali misses her first 2 Qs of you just sidestepping in and out of her range, you can then take E and just obviously PTA trade her and deal a lot of damage. And by the level 2, you can take W and then end up flashing onto her, or getting another hard trade with E if you're able to reach her. So I would say obviously the main skill is avoiding her passive, playing off her energy, and obviously with her having long cooldowns too on her W. Once she does W, you try to just like get out of range, try and obviously, you know, play in a way to avoid her Qs, and they'll obviously give you a bigger advantage in the matchup, and obviously her long cooldowns too are another giant thing in this matchup too that Renekton can abuse. And obviously by the level 6 point as well, Renekton does get a lot stronger in this matchup. Now Akali obviously is very strong at level 6 too, but Renekton's stats that he gets from his ult damage, his overall ult health, and just being like the bruiser pick that he is overall, it does obviously overwhelm Akali. And as long as she's not getting those early advantages before level 6, Renekton should really, you know, have a pretty easy time when it comes to 1v1s. In terms of itemization too, I do think getting Heimerdinger can be very good if you're unsure and her damage is hitting quite hard. You can also get things like Black Cleaver, you can get Eclipse too if you are snowballing. These items are all pretty great overall. You can rush more Man Mortiers too if you think you need that magic resist shield and just those little bit of extra stats to help win 1v1s. But furthermore, I think that's practically when it comes to Akali. In terms of runes, PTA can be very good too if you're playing like a more damaged playstyle where you obviously want to play to burst her. Conqueror isn't bad either because obviously when she does go invisible, you having your Q up, your ultimate up, you are stacking that Conqueror damage as well, and it can be very beneficial too in those 1v1s, and it does give you that extra sustain damage that you need to also beat her. So it's a matter of preference when it comes to runes, it's just whatever you prefer, but as long as you're doing these little tips of trying to avoid her damage, you know, not getting hit by her E, using minions to obviously avoid getting hit by her E, obviously, you know, walking around a lot, trying to dodge her Qs, all this is going to be very pivotal in beating Akali for Renekton. Now, the next champion that we have is Akshan. So Akshan, I would say, is more... This is another matchup where I can put it challenging or hard. Now, I don't think Akshan really is a hard matchup for me because the thing that makes Akshan very easy to deal with is the fact that Renekton's dashes can interrupt his E. Now, a lot of Akshan's damage does come from his, obviously, on-hit passive and his E. But if Renekton does cancel that E out by double dashing into him when he gets the chance, or like just trying to run down, Akshan can't really do anything at that point because he has no E, he has no way to space away against you. And if you're level 6 too, this matchup just becomes super easy because you just tank all his damage. You can't really deal with your stats if you're on top of him. And he's pretty easy to kill overall too if you know how to use your shield break and just know how to, use your Fury management, and just play away from letting him deal damage that he needs before that point. Now, what makes it challenging too is that being that it's a range matchup, he can hurt quite a lot early before that level 6. So getting your played steel caps is very important in being able to make him do less damage to you. Getting that move speed too helps you get out of that auto attack range that he has. Going things like D-Shield Second Wind, they're also very important too in being able to keep your health up earlier on, and obviously just playing for sustain. Then once Akshan does shove waves and he is under your tower, you can do some quick combos, be in and out, and that's what gives Akshan quite a frustrating experience when it comes to playing against Renekton. And obviously at the level 6 point, Renekton is basically just entirely favored, so I wouldn't say this matchup is entirely hard. It's just a matter of being patient in your early levels, not tanking too much damage, and just kind of weathering that storm. And when it comes to mid-game and team fights, obviously trying to not give Akshan those revives is pretty pivotal in being able to win the game against him. So if you can defend your teammates that are low, try and peel him off your team and just try to one-shot him as quick as you can. Akshan can't really do anything, and obviously spam ping on the map is very important. So if you can spam ping a lot, you can just ping his movements at all times. This is going to give your teammates the confidence to play the map against him, as well as yourself too, in being able to not ensure he's going to get free kills as well. So I'd say furthermore, Akshan I would say is challenging in terms of items and builds. Down the screen right now, Stridebreaker can be a really good choice into Akshan, just due to the fact that he can't really escape you once you use the active. Cleaver, once again, another great item, but if you're also looking for like a full damage alternative too, in being able to one-shot Akshan, Ghostblade can be very great too, and it is a really solid item if you are snowballing. So just keep these things in mind. As long as you rush boots and then you pick the item of your choice for the game and the team comp, you shouldn't really have any problems with this matchup, in my opinion. Now, the next champion that we do have is Ambessa. So, Ambessa, I would actually say maybe she's a easy matchup. Now, a lot of people in high elo will say this matchup is very brain dead easy. Now, I will agree to an extent that this matchup is very easy. However, because I am trying to obviously appeal to a wider demographic of players, not just in high elo, but also in low elo, I will say the matchup is more easy. Now, what makes this matchup easy for Renekton is that once Ambessa dashes in, you can use your W to shield break her W, obviously, which is a very important aspect of this matchup. Now, if you are obviously a low elo player, you might make the mistake of not using your empowered W into a W, which will end up giving her a more heavy trading pattern, and you won't really be able to obviously defend against it, and she'll be able to get more damage against you, while you're not able to return the damage in return. So obviously, making sure that you hold your W for your W, and obviously playing in a way where you wait for her to jump onto you, and then you use your abilities accordingly, that is what will matter the most in this matchup. So if you do that, if you do time that well, you do obviously not trade into a bone playing, and you do try and play wave states where she's overextended and you obviously avoid Q1 and Q2 damage, this match will be very easy for you. And by level 6 too, Renekton's stats are just so overwhelming to the point where Ambessa can't really match you at any stage of the game. So that is practically when it comes to the matchup. And obviously the things that you should obviously look out for is trying to ping her movements, make sure she doesn't get her ultimate off on your teammates. Try and even body block it if you can. If you stand behind your carry's hitboxes, Ambessa will choose you instead, leaving obviously her in a really bad position where you can end up stunning her and just completely one-shotting her from that. So Ambessa, pretty easy matchup overall. I do have a video on the screen right now too if you do want to see how to play into it. I highly recommend it. In terms of overall builds, I would say too, I think going Conqueror is very good into Ambessa, because the more stats you have, the more harder it is for her to win all-ins or any like early trades at the start of the game. By level 3 mark as well, Renekton just completely takes over the lane into Ambessa, so she'll not really stand a chance as well if you take in Conqueror, as all your trades are just completely gapping her. In terms of builds as well, Eclipse is a very solid choice as you're able to match her shields. The only difference is that Renekton will be able to constantly shield break Ambessa's W, and if you're also doing the 3 points into W max strategy, which I also recommend, then Ambessa can't really ever win trades against you, because you constantly have W's up, she cannot escape you, and you also have the burst damage too to completely one-shot her over and over again. Black Cleaver is also another good item that you can play as well into Ambessa, as all the cooldown reduction, armor shred is very handy in a bruiser matchup, as well as the fact you're going to get multiple E's in a fight against her, the more haste that you have. So that is practically it when it comes to items and builds. Obviously, it's on the screen as well. But yeah, very easy matchup, I would say, or easy matchup as well if you're more of a beginner or maybe even intermediate into a good Ambessa player. Now, the next champion that I will add, which is kind of a curveball, but I have seen it, is actually Ashe top lane. Now, let's talk about it. Ashe top lane is actually pretty good into Renekton. And if you want a cheesy counter pick, I do actually recommend you this because so Ashe top lane is kind of like secret tech into Renekton, and I've played against it a few times, and it has been very difficult because she'll take runes like Lethal Tempo or even PTA, and she'll play in a way similar to Varus, where she'll constantly auto-attack you down, try and kite you out, and it does make the matchup very, like, annoying and difficult. So, the way you want to play against this is kind of like taking things like D-Shield, Second Wind, and just playing for level 6 mainly, and getting, like, Boots of Swiftness, or even played Steel Caps too. Whatever you prefer, really, but yeah, this pick is underratedly good. It does operate like a range lane bully, so obviously taking the precautions to be patient, getting that level 6 is very vital. And obviously when we do have the ult, we can win any trade possible, but if we are taking very reckless trades early on, Ashe can heavily punish with her passive slow and just her overall Q damage as well, so that is something to consider, and it can be, you know, a very surprising matchup, but I will just leave it here because I do think it is actually pretty good tech too. And she can also go this like on-hit style bruiser build. I don't know how to really say it. Like a Borg, a Hexplate style build. And it can be very cancer to deal with, I will add, you know. So I'm going to leave it here in the case that you do play against it and you take it for granted like I did. Where I took E-Slot, then I lost. So yeah, we'll leave it hard. It can be difficult. But if you play for level 6, you play, you know, Second Wind, PTA. And then you go maybe Stridebreaker first. It will be very easy. And if you play with your jungler too, this matchup will also be very easy as well. And I guess to add on as well, you can take things like Exhaust as well if you really want to, but I don't think it's super necessary, but it is also an idea as well if you think this matchup is pretty difficult. Now, another hard matchup that I will include after Ashe is Aurora. So Aurora is very annoying as well. If the player is good at Aurora and knows how to manage a mana and space away from you, this matchup can feel like a big stonewall because you can never really progress in this matchup. You can play weak side and play really well as a blind pick into this, where you're playing off your Q heal, Second Wind, Merc Treads, just trying to like play obviously not to die. That can work, and to obviously make Aurora potentially fall off too as her pick is designed to be like more of a bully. However, like I said, you can't really progress. Feels a bit more of like a stone wall, like you're just stuck in the laning phase. Like if you're not getting any help too, it can feel very terrible too, but at most you can obviously drain her mana. You can obviously force her back with your ultimate as well if you play it right. D-Shield, Second Wind, 100% needed into this matchup as well. Going Hex Shrink into this matchup is very needed to survive in my opinion, because if you are just going no magic resist, this matchup can feel super rough and unfair. You could also argue as well, Merc Treads can be decent if the overall game state requires you to take that. That can be a good rush as well, just to have that moon speed and that additional magic resist. But overall, I would say this matchup is very hard. But when you do get to that mid to late game, I think Renekton does find more of his stride in that point in the game, because he will have items like Stridebreaker. He will be able to buy Kayn and other items too that will help him teamfight. So as long as you can play more patient and you can just try to look out for good TPs as well on the map, that is your best bet in really being able to be a part of the game. But if you are weak-sided and you are just like left in this 1v1 state, playing to survive is basically all you can do. And if Aurora does misplay and waste her mana, you can obviously try and punish her and go for a level 6 kill as well, which can be there. But I will say, this matchup, I don't really recommend playing into it, but I wouldn't also say it's an avoid matchup. It is more of just a hard matchup that can be won, but it requires a lot of things in the process to win. Now, the next champion that I will include in the list, which I think may be an easy matchup, is Briar. Now, Briar, I don't really see this ever, but I know it is like more of a low elo pick, and I know some like streamers too do influence Briar as a top pick, like Baus and I think even Drutut. So when it comes to Renekton versus Briar, I think this matchup is overall pretty easy because Renekton's burst damage is too much for Briar to really deal with. Now, this kind of works in a way similar to Warwick, where Briar will try to play off sustain, she will try to play off her W cooldown, just constantly look for trades. But as long as you play like with anti-heal and you play in a way where you're just going W max, and you're trying to play off your ability cooldowns, Renekton should really have no problem in being able to deal with her. Obviously, the main thing to look out for too is try not to get hit by her E or stand near walls, because Briar will do more damage and will obviously have an easier time being able to heal and deal damage against you as well in doing so. So as long as you're just like playing the middle of the lane, you're playing off short trades and just disengaging and waiting for your empowered W in the lethal trades that you'll get around 40% to 30% health, this matchup really isn't difficult. And obviously avoiding her ult, you can obviously double dash into the tower if you're able to do so after she ults you. You can also try and use your E to avoid her ult as well. And yeah, I don't see how this pick really does anything. It's just more of a cheese pick. She could take things like Exhaust, which can be more challenging, but other than that, I don't think Briar really stands a chance. And in terms of runes, Conqueror, it is pretty good, I would say. You just end up stat checking her and she can't really do anything. Bone playing can also be good too, just to take away her trading patterns. And just having an easier time when she does decide to all in. Items, Executioner is very good as well, just for the healing reduction, 800 gold. I mean, you can rely off Ignite if you do kill her early, but if you do want to make matters easier for yourself, then healing reduction is by far the best way to go about it. And then going items like Eclipse is really good to block her damage of your shield, and just the fact that item is really easy to achieve as well, and being able to snowball against her. Rune King can be also a good option too if she does go a more bruiser style build. So if you are heavily snowballing, Rune King can be a good choice as well. And obviously if you do like to play bruiser as well, Black Cleaver is a no-brainer. Black Cleaver is a very solid item, but if it was me, I would probably pick Eclipse the most if you are looking to snowball against Briar. Moving on, Camille. I would say Camille is a skill matchup. Now, say what you will about Camille, but I think when you go into higher elo, this matchup does become a little bit more difficult because Camille is going to be a better champion for being able to catch people out. It's going to be a better mid to late game pick where she will be able to outscale from the fact she will be able to get plating. She will be able to get a lot more gold than she ever did compared to previous seasons. And the fact as well that she's a really great skirmishing pick as well. She can really turn the tides of a matchup too. I would say more mid to high elo maybe, or like let's say maybe like that plat to low master range. I think Camille can be very exceptionally good and more of a skill matchup into those points of the game. But I guess if we are talking like laning phase 2, shouldn't really be a difficult matchup for Renekton. So maybe I will actually drop this matchup more to easy. So obviously playing against Camille, you do want to obviously try not trade into a shield, try and play off your Empower W whenever she has a melee shield up just to instantly break. Another vital thing too is avoiding her W. You never want to try and get hit by that W, so trying to play in and out of that W radius is very important to not give her the heal. Avoiding her Q2 damage is also very important, so obviously every time that she has it up, we don't really want to trade, and if we are standing near walls, we do want to obviously avoid that because Camille will get a free trade with her Q2, so she will just Q1 minion. She will then E into W, then maybe Q2 onto you, which does set up her full combo. So obviously we do want to obviously avoid that by trying to use our E to avoid her E, or just trying to use good movement and good spatial awareness to avoid that. So I think furthermore, Camille matchup is practically easy. And if you do avoid those things overall and just avoid not getting caught by her teammates with her ult, it does make this matchup really easy to play against. And after that point, it's just trying to use your pings just to try and keep people situated where they know where Camille is at all times, trying to also avoid a heavy skirmish and strengths as well. But as long as you play laning phase correctly and you are obviously doing the right things to put her behind, Camille can't really do anything. And obviously, like I said, good pings is very vital, and obviously trying to educate your teammates where she is at all times. That will stop Camille from trying to scale into the game and stop her being a threat into the mid to late game. In terms of runes, I think PTA or Conqueror are both good, but I think mainly Conqueror is just better because of the all-in damage that you do have into Camille, where you constantly do have that advantage with that raw AD and healing from the rune. I personally think also W maxing as well is also a big deal in this matchup, because the more Ws you're able to have, the less Camille is able to really do against you. So obviously taking your cooldown from, let's say, the base cooldown of 16 seconds all the way as low as 8 to 5 seconds, 4 seconds, is very beneficial in being able to constantly overpower Camille. So if you're looking to constantly dominate Camille, 3-point skew to W max is by far the best strategy as well. And then when it comes to itemization, Eclipse is very solid as well. Into Black Cleaver is great, or Black Cleaver first is also very good. If you're looking to play more utility builds like Stridebreaker second or Zeke's, that is another great option. And if you're looking for full AD builds, Rune King is also a fantastic first time into something like a Profane or Ghostblade, wherever you prefer really. But as long as you're doing these things, Camille is a pretty easy matchup, and the build doesn't really matter as long as you play the laning phase and fundamentals correctly. And now the next matchup, which funnily enough is one of my most favorite matchups in the game, is Cassiopeia. Now Cassiopeia I will probably put in challenging. So Renekton into Cassiopeia is very interesting because I think Renekton is one of the only champions that can reliably deal with Cassiopeia due to the fact that his 2 dashes are very great in being able to reach her and burst her down. He can also use his E1 and E2 to obviously bait out her W or even her ultimate if he does it correctly. And I think overall, Renekton is just so perfectly designed in being able to deal with Cassiopeia that she really won't really have an answer in laning phase as long as you play the fundamentals and your mechanics correctly. The way the laning phase does work is that you can take either D-Blade, Ignite, and just go for a kill level 1 to 3, like within that range. Or you can obviously take Second Wind D-Shield too, if you want to play a little bit more passively for level 3 onwards. Now, the way Renekton does kill Cassio, level 1, is that if Cassio does walk in the bush, like the middle top bush, Renekton can get there as well and trade with PTA and E start. And doing that as well will help you bust a health bar down to halfway. And once you get to that halfway point and also proc that PTA, you can E2 backwards and then wait for your E next to come back up. And once your E does come back up in the minion wave, you can obviously play for level 2 to get W. Or you can also coin flip going for a E dash trade with your empowered E. So that can also help you get a kill as well and also help you set her back behind really early. If you just take exhaust, however, I do recommend obviously playing to get level 2, which is more important. And obviously when she does exhaust you, you want to dash away as quick as you can. That way Cassio won't be able to turn the fight, and you will also be able to wait for the next B that is available to potentially kill her. And then obviously from level 3 onwards, the matchup gets pretty easy. It's just all about movement. Dodging her Q is basically the most important thing of this matchup. If you can dodge her Q, she won't get her additional stats to really overpower you. She won't be able to kite you as hard as that you would actually think. Obviously, if she hits Q, she gets a burst of moon speed, but if she misses it, she gets nothing. So obviously then you're able to, you know, space away. You're able to get the perfect trades that you need into out-trading her. And Cassio just won't be able to do anything. Now, you would also think, oh, but Cassio has her W. How can I use my E if she's just going to W? Well, there's a few ways you can bait it out. You can obviously look to EE really quickly, so you can bait her W, which is a longer cooldown than your own E. Another thing you can do too is that if you do walk in towards minions, or even cannon minions specifically, Cassio can use her W in those moments to try and slow you down and punish you, but she'll actually end up hurting her own chances of being able to stop you. So if you'd obviously see that and she is using it in front of you, that is a free way to trade once it is down. And obviously by level 6 too, her ultimate is a key ability in being able to abuse her as well. You can use obviously your right clicking as well and use your overall movement to bait her ultimate out. So if you're walking towards her and then she starts her ult animation, you can quickly click backwards to avoid her ult, which then loses all her power in being able to win the 1v1 against you. And with your ultimate up as well, Cassio can't really do anything. So as long as you're always trying to click backwards, just any chance that you get walking towards her, or if you're on top of her, Cassio will never hit ultimate, and it just becomes super easy in being able to kill her. In terms of runes, PTA I think is by far the best rune, as you are playing for short combos and just trying to one-shot her. Second Wind is obviously very good too for sustain if you are looking to go D-shield and play a more passive start into your more aggressive level 3 to 6 power spikes. In terms of itemization as well, going Ghostblade or Eclipse are both great options as well. Ghostblade can give you burst damage to help one-shot her easy if you are ahead already in the matchup. Eclipse as well does give you a safety pound with the shield as well to block her incoming damage, and it also is a very cheap alternative as well to your other item choices, which I think is also a better choice in this matchup. Now there are items too like Stridebreaker, which does seem really great on paper, but my only con with this item in a matchup like this is the fact that the gold costs so much to where like you are missing out potential snowballing ability compared to a Ghostblade or Eclipse. So definitely keep that in mind too. But if you are playing competitive and you are playing an environment where you want to be more safe, you want to be more consistent, and maybe you're actually willing to give up a little bit of your power overall, you can obviously go Stridebreaker as well. Now the next matchup that I will talk about will actually surprise you, because this matchup to me used to be super easy. However, over the years of just like buffing and changing this champion, as well as the overall build paths, which has kind of led me to kind of believe this champion is practically challenging when it comes to the tier list. So this champion specifically is Cho'Gath. Now in lower MMR, I think Cho'Gath is easier to deal with because you are able to get items like Blade of Ruin King more consistently. And being able to have Blade of Ruin King will help you completely dominate this matchup, as he is relying on stacking health. However, the biggest problem with Blade of Ruin King as an item, which I always like to talk about, is the fact that in higher MMR or elos where teamfighting is more prevalent, this item gets massively outscaled because you don't have the bruiser stats and utility stats to really carry Renekton's mid-game power. Now obviously this is a big problem because Blade of Ruin King is the core item that counters Cho'Gath, but because you're unable to reliably use it, this does make going the item a lot weaker, and it also does lower our overall chances in being able to snowball against him as well. And something as well that I do notice as well is that even when I do build Blade of Ruin King at times in the Cho'Gath, I still end up losing trades, and I think that is completely ridiculous because the champion will just have Grasp and his E, and that alone is enough to outdamage me. And when he does get Heartsteel, his damage becomes even more ridiculous, and I think once he does also get items like Despair or even Full Mail, Blade of Ruin King's overall effectiveness does become a lot lower. So furthermore, I think this matchup is a lot more challenging, but what I will say as well is that you can still play a very clean laning phase to put him behind. You can obviously dodge his Qs, you can also manipulate his, his slow ability casts and his timing windows, like his W silence. You can use abilities before that or right at the start of the animation to apply damage onto him before he's able to trade against you. There are ways in being able to obviously put this champion behind. Going items like Black Cleaver really doesn't hurt you in the matchup because this item does give you a giant boost in team fighting power and overall mid-game presence. So even if you're building Black Cleaver, it can feel super good into him because obviously later on he will stack armor and it will help your team be able to do more damage to him. And furthermore as well, I do find it more consistent as well. So when we do talk about builds, Black Cleaver I find is pretty decent, I would say. Going Eclipse as well can help obviously to shred health, but I do find that like Blighted Ruin King, it does fall off in that mid to late game power. And when you are trying to play Renekton in Season 16, I think getting health and just being more beefy in fights is a lot more appealing, and it does feel a lot better to play into champions that are also tanks. So in my opinion, I do favor Cleaver Strikebreaker as a better alternative build into snowballing the game overall. However, if you are in like an MMR or a game where maybe you don't need to worry about the team fight so much, or even just like the macro ability, and you are just going to play off mechanics and snowballing your lead, Blighted Ruin King is obviously great into that, and then going more Bruiser as well with Cleaver second and maybe Sterox third is also a great alternative as well in being able to snowball your game state. In terms of runes, PTA or Conqueror are both good. An underrated thing about PTA into tank matchups like Cho'Gath is when you do ult and you proc PTA, your ultimate is also doing a lot more damage. So having that ult damage, and even like having an item like Sojourn later on, can also be pretty good as well because you're amplifying your burn damage, which is helping you combat tankier champions a lot easier. So that is also a very underrated item too if you do want to look to getting that as a second or maybe like a third, fourth item if you're able to build that in your overall build order. But yeah, overall there's not much to really say. I do have some videos where I have played against this matchup as well if you are curious to see how I play into Cho'Gath with items like Black Cleaver, so I do recommend it as well if you are curious to see that. Now the next matchup, which is by far probably the most fun, interactive and most adrenaline based matchup within the game, is probably Darius. So gonna put Darius in the skill matchup. Now, I have said numerous times that Darius is a matchup where if Renekton is the better player between two, or even if like you put two great players against each other, I think Renekton is by far the better pick when it comes to early to mid to late game, because Renekton is able to obviously play team fights a lot more effectively and easier because he has a stun. And the fact as well, he has like a giant ult, he has armor shred on E, and he has all these like little things too. It can really help put Darius behind and not let Darius play those points of the game. However, I will say you do have great players like Raider as well that do obviously disprove that. Raider is an absolute beast on Darius, and he really does play a really good Renekton matchup too when you do obviously watch him. And obviously as well, that makes it a skill matchup is like you literally can take any skill level one and it's a completely different game from Darius matchup to Darius matchup. Now, for example, right, if Darius takes Q, Renekton will have an overall better start because Renekton's Q cooldown is slightly lower, and it's also easier to hit too. Renekton can obviously go into his Q to avoid the outer damage and also avoid the heal. So he's able to trade a lot more damage effectively, as well as avoiding a bleed stack. Renekton can also take E and PTA trade, which can also half health Darius, and then by the level 2 mark, when he gets his W, he can also kill Darius as well, if he gets the correct window. Another example too, if Darius takes W, Renekton can't really win that level 1 or get that wave prior because Darius will just constantly try to fight you. Hence why taking E-Star on Renekton feels a lot better because you can obviously space away from him and get a more reliable trade into that playstyle. Now, while you are going kind of 50-50 in that aspect, if you're able to get level 2 safely and also avoid him killing you, that is also a big win in my opinion. So if you're able to do that consistently, that playstyle doesn't really feel a threat. Now another thing too is that Darius can skill E as well, which can make the matchup even more interesting because at the start, if you try and go for an E triad, Darius can pull you back and then end up getting a harder trade of his passive and his 5 stacks, which can end up killing you. So obviously at that point, we need to be really careful, and if we do take Q for example into that scenario, we can actually even win the fight against him. So overall, it does just depend on how you're skilling and how you're playing. And this matchup is really crazy to begin with. But obviously, when we get to level 3 onwards, we do have the access in being able to do Q cancels more consistently. So we can go in and out. We can hold our W2 to help us disengage. So if we combo in with EQ auto attack, we can empower W and then E out or auto E, which prevents Darius from being able to get the pull on us unless he has tenacity. And just from that training power alone, after 2 or 3 trades, he's pretty easy to kill as well. By level 6, as long as you're avoiding his passive and you're obviously playing in a way to avoid his combos, using your E diligently to avoid his Q or trying to like walk into him to avoid his Q, Darius won't really win the trades. Renekton will just kind of hard steamroll if he plays it correctly. But obviously as well, playing off his passive is very important, and if Darius knows how to position properly with his Ghost, it can obviously make a more interesting game, and it can also lead to more interesting situations. Overall, this is like the perfect skill matchup. Whoever plays better will win, but obviously whoever has jungle pressure too will also dominate the game. So obviously try to always play to avoid jungle, and try to also communicate with your jungler as well to put him behind, because whoever falls behind in this matchup has a really rough game in coming back. In terms of runes, you can kind of go either into Darius. PTA is my preferred rune in this matchup, as it does also amplify your ignite against his Ghost. Having that extra ignite damage is a really big help in just being able to get those consistent fights against him. Conqueror, on the other hand, I mean, while it can seem good at post level 6 spike, Darius also does have Conqueror, so I also prefer just like trying to burst him down, try and play off quick combos. That also does benefit me more than just going Conqueror and kind of coin flipping a trade, which will end up maybe making him have even more of an advantage. Obviously, when it comes to mid to late game, I think Renekton is a better pick, like I said, because he can play fundamentals better. He's got great wave clear. He can peel his teammates very exceptionally. He can be a big meat shield. As long as you can peel Darius away from your team, you really shouldn't really have a problem against him if you are even or even ahead. And when it comes to builds as well, Briar Rune King can be a great item if you just want to completely shut him out and hard win the matchup. So can Eclipse as well, depends on preference, wherever you prefer. But if you're looking for like a stable item too, which can obviously help against his ultimate, being able to have more health and just being able to have more cooldown reduction too, Black Cleaver can be a solid item as well. So it's overall preference and just whatever you prefer. Moving on, next matchup, we have Dr. Mundo. So Dr. Mundo is, I would say he can be easy, but to be honest, as I'm looking here and just like with how games can go, I would actually say just like Cho'Gath, this matchup can be challenging. So this matchup doesn't need to necessarily be hard in the laning phase. Like in the laning phase, I would say it's all about trying to keep the wave on your side of the map. So when Mundo is forced to overextend, and once he throws Q out at a minion, we can manipulate our movement and just be next to that minion to double dash right from it after he hits it. And then we're able to combo on top of him with our W, try and get his passive, and then obviously walk into his passive to avoid it. Now, this obviously works out really great for me. There are a lot of times too I'm able to dive Mundo if I'm getting those heavy trades, because early on at that point, Mundo can't really sustain that damage. And even level 1 too, I do like to take E-Star. I try to trade after he Qs a minion. And then by level 2 as well, I can look to tower dive if I do hard crash the second wave. Or I'm able to obviously play for that third wave crash, look for my level 3, fire in the tower. And I can kill him too if I play it consistently well. So do have a short as well about that, just saying. I feel like in this video, I'm just constantly promoting my stuff. But I kind of hope to do that because I think in theory, when I'm talking about it, it might be hard for people to understand. But if you do watch the videos, I do have a blueprint in being able to do that. So if you are watching those matchup videos, whether it's my like actual full videos or it's my shorts, I definitely recommend it too to get like a good gauge of like how to play a matchup. But moving on though, what makes this matchup really challenging is there can be points where Mundo can just feel like a stonewall. Maybe if the enemy jungler is fed and he's playing topside and he's like kind of keeping you guessing, it can be hard to really abuse Mundo. And just like the Blighter Rune King argument with Cho'Gath, same thing applies here. You can get Blighter Rune King, it can feel pretty good, but because items like Warmogs exist, Mundo can literally just walk out of range for a few like seconds, come back, and then he's healed all his health up. And because we're playing Blighter Rune King, we can't really get our health up fast enough to really deal with him. And quite often as well, our health is so understated in fighting him that it just feels like such a brick wall to really deal with. And that it's kind of just led me to stop playing Blighter Rune King altogether. Now, we can still play it. We might have a game where it is working well and maybe Mundo isn't playing good enough. But ultimately, if we're playing for mid-game and playing for team fights, we're playing off the lead that we managed to garner before that point, we can obviously dominate the game. And I think that's what matters the most in these type of matchups. Like, we use these like bad matchups to kind of hard win our lane early, or at least play in a way where we are getting a distinct advantage. And after we take that tower and we are able to play more of our team, that's where Renekton will really be able to shine compared to like, let's say, a Mundo. So obviously, I think Eclipse or Cleaver first is probably more beneficial. I'd probably say more Eclipse because it is a good compromise in being able to have max health damage, being able to have more AD, and just like a good snowball start, and just the shield too. All of which are just great in being able to combat against him. But when he does get that Warmogs, this matchup does feel like a complete slog, and it can feel awful. So at that point, we're just playing for mid-game, looking for skirmishes that favor us, and playing to obviously get all the objectives we can. And furthermore, that's practically when it comes to Mundo. When it comes to runes, PTA or Conqueror, both can be good. I like PTA more just to get that early damage and just that early snowball against him. And I think that's all that there really is to say about this champ. And I guess as well, just another quick point about Mundo as well. being able to also just like play to, you know, get his W and then obviously play to use your W when it's down is very important as well. Another thing as well to say about the Mundo matchup is when he does have his passive down as well, it is also very important to abuse that. So obviously we do want to try and like, once his passive is down, which is quite a long cooldown early, we do want to try to obviously look for heavy trades and try as hard as we can to obviously, you know, put him down at that point. Otherwise, he will just be able to get his passive back up and it can lead to really awkward situations. So furthermore, that is practically it with the Mundo matchup, and we'll be moving on now to talk about the Fiora matchup. So Fiora, I would say, is more of a skill matchup once again. Fiora, just like Cassio, is one of my most favorite matchups in the game because Fiora can play many different playstyles with Grasp or PTA, Conqueror, and we constantly have to just adapt as well to like the way they play. We do also have to play around a kit too, which does have a lot of mini games with it, like a passive vitals, a W, playing around our R vitals as well, all of which are very important to having success against Fiora. So obviously with a passive, if we get a vital that is facing her, it will obviously favor the matchup in her favor at those points, but if we're able to walk out of range or reset it, or if she does get the vital and it positions on a side where she's not able to hit, that does obviously give us a distinct advantage in being able to trade and to play the laning state. Obviously, every time we get these vitals too, we also want to always position away from her, because if she's unable to hit those, she won't be able to heal or do bonus damage, which is very giant in being able to get the advantages we need to win trades against her and be able to kill her. One of the most biggest and important aspects to the Fiora matchup as well is making sure that we never W her W. Now, the way that Fiora can combo is she will either wait as long as she can to throw a W out in hopes that you're going to W, or she will start off by doing a Q into like auto W trade, which will obviously do a quick trading pattern and being able to do some damage against you, and obviously it can rack up and do a good amount of damage as well. Obviously with that trading pattern, Fiora will only do it mainly if you have no Fury or if she has the wave built up on her side. So anytime you're in those situations, make sure to obviously wait for the wave to completely reset on your favor, or try to also, you know, don't walk up into range when she has the wave stacked up, otherwise it will give her free damage and give her what she needs to obviously overpower you. Now, obviously in the other situation where she holds W, we can obviously abuse this by once understanding how she Ws, we can obviously look to W first and burst her down, or we can hold her W right after she Ws and then trade against her within the attack speed slow timer, which won't affect us at all, by the way, if we W then E out. So it is also a good thing to obviously note to not give Fiora the advantage. Something Fiora players do as well is like, they do really punish sloppy Renekton plays. So if you are just making your Ws very obvious, Fiora will always get the upper hand on you by timing it well and hard punishing you. And every time that you do get punished, it is practically a death sentence. So we want to always make sure that we end up Wing right after a W, or at least trying to mix up our W patterns to always throw her off. And obviously when you get that, Fiora loses so much value and momentum in the matchup to where Renekton is always like heavily favored at those points. Another thing Renekton can do too to obviously dominate the matchup and make matters easier for himself is that he can max W as well. So you can go 3-point Q into W max. That is a really great playstyle into this, as you're able to consistently have more Ws up. I think you end up getting actually like 3 Ws up before she's able to get 1 W up, which is practically game changing, you know. So if you're able to hard abuse that, Fiora won't be able to really do anything against you. So obviously keep that in mind. Try and play away from her vitals, and this matchup does become a lot easier once you figure that out. In terms of runes, I would say I favor Conqueror a lot more, but if you're like the full damage type of Renekton player, going PTA isn't a problem either, as you're able to go PTA into like Ghostblade or Blade of Ruin King. These are both great and really depend on your overall preference. Going Eclipse is also great, as you're able to completely block her damage with the shield. And once you get that Eclipse, Fiora's unable to get any good training patterns at all. So it is a matter of preference, it is a matter of whatever you prefer, but ultimately, if you play those fundamentals right and the mechanics, you will not really have a problem within this matchup. Now, the next matchup to talk about is Gangplank. So Gangplank, I would say, is probably a challenging matchup. So the reason Gangplank is challenging is because this requires really clean play. And I feel like sometimes, even for myself, when I play my first game of the day and I'm against like some GP one trick that's like GM or something like that, it can feel quite challenging because my timings to get his barrels is practically very important. If he ever gets those barrels onto me, I lose so much health, and it does reset his passive to do even more damage towards me. And obviously that can also throw me away from being able to touch the wave, and I can feel myself in this very uncomfortable position where I am getting poked by GP, and that is all just due to the fact that I couldn't get his barrels and I couldn't get that timing correctly. So obviously GP can be very like mentally challenging if you aren't ready in that first game of the day and you aren't like obviously warmed up. But if you are warmed up and you are also feeling more confident as well, you can obviously time the barrels of your auto attacks. You can obviously use your movement to go in and out to bait those barrel hits. And once GP hasn't got the barrels, we can obviously play in a way to, you know, do our combos, we get his W. Once we get his W, it is quite a long cooldown too. So obviously the next W and E that we have, we can hard trade him and look for our kill angles off of that as well. GP, I would say, is a lot weaker this season as well. So compared to previous seasons as well, I think Gangplank is a lot easier to deal with. And as long as we're playing like the level 1 correctly, where we're not tanking his passive, we're not getting hit by barrels, and we're also like using our Q to poke him while not trying to take minion damage in return, the matchup can feel quite easy. And as long as we're getting that level 2 before him, we're able to consistently get that level 2 power spike to hard punish him. And by level 3, we can either tower dive him or even like get the kill if he walks up to the wave. Another thing that does help in this matchup is taking things like D-Shield and Second Wind can help you mitigate against his poke. However, I do find that going Doran's Blade in this season isn't a bad idea, and I do find myself liking that a little bit more, but it is a matter of preference. In terms of optimization, I think this does matter quite a lot for the player as well. Black Cleaver can feel very good because you do feel very tanky in being able to tank Gangplank's damage, as well as also having the stats to consistently beat him in 1v1s. Going things like Briar Rune King can be really hard to play because him getting Essence Reaver is a giant spike compared to you getting Briar Rune King, as his overall damage, CDR, and the cost of when he gets this item does obviously overpower the Briar Rune King purchase, in my opinion. And then when you are playing Glass Cannon into Gangplank as well, Gangplank can consistently just one-shot you, I feel like, even if he is behind. So it's not really the best idea too, in my opinion, to go for a Glass Cannon playstyle of going Briar Rune King, Ghostbite and stuff like that. That's not to say that it can't work, but I'm just offering that it is obviously a more punishing playstyle. So if you do want to obviously have that consistency, Cleaver Stridebreaker into Randuin's does feel very good as well if the enemy has a lot of crit users, or if you're just solely playing against Gangplank as well. In terms of runes, I think both runes are really good. Conqueror can give you more all-in damage when you are trying to play those level 6 fights out, which is more in Renekton's favour once he does get his ultimate. However, I have tried going more PTA as well this season, and I found it to be a very consistent rune in me being able to win. So I do think, again, it's just a matter of preference, or just wherever you prefer. But as long as you play these like correct laning states in the matchup and just trying to obviously avoid his strengths, Renekton should have a pretty easy time, and you obviously can be more of a frontline based pick, which can obviously abuse the enemy top liners picking a champion like Gangplank, which is very squishy. So making sure that you're a frontline that you can tank damage and just soak up for your team is a very giant stat in itself. So if you're able just to play those situations correctly, Renekton can be a really great pick into Gangplank most of the time. Now moving on, the next matchup we're going to be talking about is Garen. And Garen, for me, I would say is very easy. Now, a lot of people can say it's a skill matchup, they can say it's challenging, but I'll be honest with you, I don't think it's either of them. I think it's just pretty easy. The only challenging aspect in the Garen matchup is just making sure that you don't W his W. If you can just hold off from using all your damage in his W, Garen becomes very easy to outtrade. Obviously, we do need to keep into account of not getting hit by all of his Qs, and we can obviously trade against him by doing a quick auto Q. If we time it correctly in his Q timing, we can also obviously auto W as well. This alone will give us the strength in being able to trade him back and get a good level 1 and 2 into him. And by the level 3 points where he does get his E, obviously just holding your abilities until his W is off is what is going to consistently give us the power in being able to snowball the matchup. Another thing as well to talk about in the Garen matchup is like, as long as you're not obviously hard trading in his E as well, being active, that will obviously give you a lot more power in being able to deal with him. A lot of Renekton players, like in the matchup, will obviously make all these mistakes where they're getting hit by Qs, they're firing in his E, and they're obviously trading into his W, so they feel like they do no damage, and then Garen just gets to do whatever he wants. So if you don't do at least 2 of these things, Garen just ends up being quite an easy matchup, and I think overall, it's not as difficult as it's made out to be. Now, obviously, Garen does have his bullshit R, so we do have to keep that into consideration, that we don't just die while on low health. But if you do time your ult correctly, and if you are playing, obviously, to avoid his, like, E with using your E to space away from him or in front of him, he will never really do anything. Renekton scales way better as a pick, as he's able to be a more consistent utility-based champion for his teammates in comparison to Garen. Garen is more of, like, trying to one-shot squishes before they're able to react, so if you can play near people and peel them off consistently, Garen won't be able to really do anything at those stages of the game. In terms of runes, Conqueror I would say is the best rune of choice here, as it does give you more all-in power to win against Garen. And going items like Black Cleaver or Eclipse are obviously the items of choice as well. However, you can also go Cleaver Stridebreaker or even Cleaver Sterix. It just depends on wherever you prefer, really. And if you are hard snowballing against him, you can go Briar Rune King too. Now, the next champion that I will say is also maybe a skill matchup / challenging is Gnar. So I think I'll leave Gnar in the skill matchup because I think when both players are good, it is just favored down to whoever can play their jumps or dashes better. So typically the way this matchup works is level 1 you can take E-Start. Now E-Start can be harder into Fleet Footwork Gnar, but being the fact that he does have lesser stats without the Grasp, you can take E, do a hard trade against him, and by level 2 you can get W and one-shot him. That is a pretty consistent strat as well. However, later on in the matchup, when he does get more moon speed from Boots Rush, it can be a lot more difficult into Gnar, so being able to match Boots is very beneficial too. So if you can get those Boots rushed quickly, Gnar won't be able to really abuse his moon speed against you, and you'll also be able to take a lot more of his auto attack damage too when trying to do trades against him. The biggest thing in playing against Gnar as well is making sure that you don't tank his free hit passive, as well as you're also timing your E correctly against his own E. I think the E from the top of my head is either 28 or 26 second cooldown, maybe even 27. It's between that time slot, so in that time, Renekton will get his E back up after using it the first time. So you'll end up dashing in, he will jump, you disengage away. In that time you do dash in as well, you're able to proc his bone playing with Q. So you will EQ, he jumps away, and then you obviously E back. Once you E's back up, you can go for a more heavy trade too, as long as he's not going to get his Mega Form. So once you're able to do that, you're able to get more consistent and more bursty trades against him in his mini form, which will obviously lead to a lot more easier kills. When Gnar is in Mega Form, we don't really want to trade against him. We want to try and trade away from being next to a wall. We want to try and obviously sidestep his W and his Q using our E's or our moon speed, or using our right clicks to move in and out. All these contribute into a better Gnar matchup. And later on, when he does get his Black Cleaver and Triforce together, the matchup will feel a lot more difficult in terms of pure 1v1. However, at those stages of the game, we do just want to use our snowballing ability that we gained in the laning phase and try and just to overall dominate the mid to late game fights. Obviously, every time we're in those situations of the game as well, we want to make sure that we don't obviously group up and fight against a Mega Gnar in a Dragon Pit or a Baron Pit. So making sure to wait out his Mega Gnar timer is very crucial in taking away his playability. So if you're able to play these things correctly, Gnar won't be really a difficult matchup. It's just more or less making sure you're patient enough to wait off your E cooldown in the laning phase, and making sure you also don't get moon speed gapped earlier on. In terms of items, I think going either Cleaver Rush or Stridebreaker is very good. Stridebreaker can feel a bit meh, but if you're in a competitive setting and you do want to just play for overall consistency and play with your team, Stridebreaker Rush can feel very good into the matchup, as sometimes Gnar can play very boring too. So you will have that time just to scale and obviously have an even better power spike than he will when getting the Stridebreaker. If you are ahead and you are looking to try and kill him consistently, Black Cleaver can feel very good too, or even Eclipse as well. Overall though, for me, I do find that Black Cleaver Stridebreaker feels the best for me. And going a rune like PTA also does feel a lot better than going Conqueror. Next matchup, we have the fatty himself, Gragas. So Gragas, I don't think Gragas is that difficult, I'll be honest with you. Now, Gragas is only difficult depending on how good the player is, and a lot of people that do play the matchup are one-tricks, so maybe it could be a skill matchup. But for me personally, I think if you do just rush Merc Treads, Gragas won't really get the trades he wants, because going Merc Treads does break out that self-stun a lot easier, so Gragas can't just E and run away. You can obviously get Merc Treads break out quicker, then trade against him and burst him down. At that point in the game too, Gragas is very easily killable. And then by the time you do get items like Eclipse or even Cleaver, Gragas can't really abuse you as much as he could before. So I find this champion is pretty easy to deal with. Personally, it is all about just playing behind minions, playing for poke. You do have better wave clearing away because he will use a lot of mana early game. So trying to obviously hard abuse that and trying to do things like W buffering is also very important. Another thing you can do as well is if Gragas is Wing and then trying to E into you, you can activate W as he's dashing into you. So you can W spam right click and you will W him at the same time as he E's. So once you get that off as well, you do also have the luxury of breaking out of his stun faster before he gets out of your one. And you obviously can get a heavy trade and look to dive under his turret, or at least also burn his ultimate. So furthermore, this champion is pretty easy to deal with, and I think even mid to late game, Renekton just serves as a better pick compared to Gragas, with how much Gragas has to play more optimally. In terms of itemization, Merc Treads into Eclipse feels the best items of choice here, as you're able to block his damage out and get more bursty trades into him. Black Cleaver can also feel good too to match his CDR. So if you do want to go Black Cleaver as well, that is not a bad option. Taking a rune like Conqueror does feel pretty good, but I think PTA isn't also bad. But I just find that in those level 6 fights where Gragas is trying to be more aggressive, Conqueror does feel better to play into him. Alright guys, next we have Gwen. But before I do talk about Gwen, I'm just going to express real quickly that we've already gone through quite a few matchups already, and I will say that I'm a little bit out of breath. There is so much to talk about when it comes to Renekton matchups, and you know, I just do hope that right now as you guys are watching, you do appreciate the effort and the content that I'm putting out. And if you do, make sure to leave a like, make sure to comment as well what type of videos you want to see. And if you are enjoying the content and you want to also join the community, make sure to join my Discord and also subscribe to the channel. Now next, Gwen. I would say Gwen is in the easy category. Gwen, don't get me wrong, Gwen is insanely batshit bullshit, I think, when she gets her ultimate. And when she does get Nash's Tooth Riftmaker, this matchup can feel really annoying too with her damage. But to be honest with you, the cheat code in this matchup is going Kainic. If you're able to get a Kainic or more Malmortius, this matchup does become a lot easier by the post 2 items onwards. So if you do get that, Gwen won't be able to really deal with you in side lane. And when it does come to team fights too, you can more upfront take her burst damage as well and peel for your team. So I do think that's also a really good alternative as well. But when it comes to like laning fundamentals and just like the way you want to play the lane, obviously avoiding a max stat Q is very important. So trying to obviously play to avoid that and play for your Q poke. And by trying to like push waves, you can try and get level 2 before her and try and go for a hard trade as well. And other than that, it's just trying to like play the wave state more on your side, trying to give yourself more room compared to her, because if she does get the room against you and she does get a gank, she can just run you down as well. So making sure that you do play further waves on your side and go for short trades. And by the time you do get her like below 50% health, you can potentially kill her too if you have your ultimate up or you do have the Fury and Ignite available. After that, we can grab a Hex Shrinker if we need to, if you want to play more defensively, or you can just go Eclipse as well to completely shut her out. I do find that going W max in this matchup can feel pretty good too, but I think even going Q max isn't bad either, as the Q poke and sustain does help you stay in lane longer against her. And overall, I think this matchup is pretty straightforward. It just comes down to not throwing your lead against her, which is the main point. So if you are dying to ganks against Gwen, or even just like throwing your lead elsewhere and she gets ahead, that can feel really bad into this matchup. So making sure you're very cognizant in what you're doing and not throwing your lead is very important in this matchup, and making sure you don't get fully outscaled. And when it comes to mid to late game, Gwen does get really strong. So like I said, getting Kainic, very important, and playing obviously in a way to heal her away from your team is by far the best strategy of choice. And that will really conclude it when it comes to Gwen, because Renekton should just win every all-in earlier on. So as long as you're like playing off your ult and not trying to fire when your ultimate's down, Gwen can't really do anything, and your burst damage is just way too much for her to really beat you. Next up, we have the Heimerdinger matchup. So Heimerdinger is a pretty uncommon pick, but I will just have it here anyways in the challenging section. So Heimerdinger, I think it's not really a good matchup for him into Renekton, because Renekton's dashes does give him a lot of room to outplay Heimer's grenade toss. So typically when you do play against Heimer, he will set up turrets, and Renekton's Q can easily kill them as well. Obviously the problem with that is that you can't just walk up, because you will just lose your health. So you need to be like quite strategic about it, like trying to go for EQs, like make sure you kill the turrets, burn his mana, and also trying to bait out his grenade in the process. Renekton can quickly EQ auto attack, then E2 out. So this will obviously give him like a little trading pan into Heimerdinger, as well as also burning out his mana. And then once Heimer doesn't have the grenade too, we can obviously look for a play afterwards. Now it will time up around the same time as our E, so we can obviously change our pattern to be more of like you E in and you like E to the side, or you walk to the side. He like tries to anticipate your E dash, and obviously you can burst him down and obviously disengage. Obviously Heimerdinger can be difficult too to try and all in, as he might take exhaust. He might also try and place his ult down, and then you have to like try and disengage. But any way that we can bait those things out, it is a giant win for Renekton. So if you can obviously bait these things out, Heimerdinger doesn't really have anything to stand on. And Renekton's burst damage too is way too much for him to deal with as well. There's not much else to really say about this matchup as well, I feel like, because Heimerdinger doesn't do a lot mid to late game. He's more of like a cheese laning pick. So most often, if you can play, you know, with D-Shield second wind, you can burn his turrets down, play for quick combos, look for a flash kill potentially when he has nothing down and he's under like 30% health. This will basically be your best bet in being able to kill him. You can go things like Ghost Blade into him as well, as the burst damage will help you burst him down a lot easier. Going Eclipse can help too, or even Stride Breaker as well if you feel like you need that, or even more Malmortius. It really depends obviously on your preference, but for me, this matchup is not so difficult. I actually really welcome the matchup. Going burst damage is my preferred way of playing into him, so going Ghost Blade, Profane, and then maybe like Shrelder right on top of that, Blade Rune King. That's like my item of choice really, so Obviously, it depends on how you want to play and what there really is in the game too to play against. So obviously, do as what you will that makes you comfortable. But with that said, playing around his turrets in his E and his ultimate Q is basically the main thing in being able to play against this matchup. Now, next champion, we have Illaoi. So Illaoi is actually quite a very easy matchup. So basically, when it comes to Illaoi, a lot of people do say that this matchup is actually very difficult. However, I do find it very easy when you're able to actually dodge the game, because obviously then my mental health doesn't need to deteriorate, and I can actually feel good about myself that I don't have to endure myself a 30 minutes of fucking pain getting analed by tentacles. Yeah, with that said, this matchup is unavoidable, so we're going to actually move it from very easy to avoidable. So, yeah, let me tell you why this matchup fucking sucks for Renekton. Now, I'm not saying this matchup is 100% dodge. Illaoi does suck mid to late game, believe it or not. When it comes to team fights and just late game, I feel like Renekton can tank more of their damage when he has more items. And he's also able to just have a better like team fight compared to Illaoi that completely relies on hitting her E and being in like a good choke point to make sure tentacles can hit all her targets. But while that is a potential benefit in being able to play this matchup and wanting to play this matchup, it is just not worth the tremendous annoyance of this matchup in the laning phase. You do have level, let's say, 1 to 6 to kill her, but after that point, side laning against this champion is just completely idiotic. Like, her E cooldown is non-existent. She can miss all the E's in the world, but you're not able to ever get the trades you want. Now, I do obviously swear by the fact that if she does miss E, you need to get your ass over her and fight the shit out of her, because that's all you can really do, right? And that's your main window of fighting her. But her tentacles you have to dodge that she spawns, the fact that like her, you know, her W can hit you, her Q, like there's so many ways for Illaoi to keep sustaining till it ease back up. Her tentacles can heal her if they hit something, her Q can heal, her grasp, her sundered. Like there's so many ways for her to sustain, and you just can't really match that. And if you are building items like executioners too, you're wasting more gold into her when she's gonna get her Frostfire Gauntlet a lot faster. Her getting Frostfire Gauntlet also feels fucking AIDS because she constantly slows you. You have no limbs to run away. And another thing that really pisses me off about the matchup is, oh, you know, you want to kill her tentacles? Oh yeah, you just go do that. You go hit a tentacle, she will end up WQing you, and then once after you kill it, another one spawns. So it's basically a fucking Hydra of fucking tentacles. So no matter how much that you want to invest into the minigame of killing tentacles, it really doesn't fucking matter. So obviously this matchup is very annoying. Renekton's hitbox is also fucking obese, so every time you try and sidestep between your minions, you'll end up getting hit by a tentacle, and you'll be like, what the fuck, how did that hit me? So again, I'm not bothered playing against Illaoi. I would rather avoid it, ban it, dodge it, whatever you want to do, right? I would rather just do those things because it is not worth my own mental health. Like, the best case scenario in this matchup is simply have your teammates win and you just survive not dying to her. And by the way, it doesn't matter if you're 2, 3, 5, 10 kills against her. She is literally Renekton's kryptonite. She is the best melee champion by far when it comes to playing into Renekton. So if you're looking for a good counter pick that is very low effort into Renekton, Illaoi is the answer. Now, obviously, Illaoi does suck later on in the game, but if you do have a very strong-sided comp to begin with, Illaoi is a great counter pick into being able to take away Renekton's strengths and making sure he doesn't do anything within the game. Now, a matchup that is on the opposite of the spectrum is Irelia. So Irelia, I would say, is easy. Now, I know some people might be saying, oh, you haven't added any champions in the very easy category yet. And to be honest with you, it's because a lot of these matchups just aren't that simple. Renekton is a thinking person's champion. Now, no matter the stereotypes that people say of Renekton being brain dead, it's absolutely not true at all, because if you play that exact same way on a Mordekaiser or Garen, there's a complete night and day difference on those champions. Renekton can't just spam all his abilities and get out. Like, he needs to properly use his Fury, his animation cancels, the abilities he's going to use, the combos. All these things actually matter compared to pressing Q every 4 seconds on a champion like Mordekaiser and making sure you fight when your enemy's isolated. Like, that's really it there is, like, to that champion, you know, for example. Sorry, Mordekaiser mains, but it's kind of the truth. So again, when it comes to, like, playing against these matchups, if you do play in a way similar to those playstyles where you're just hoping to spam your abilities and that, you know, you win, newsflash, you don't win. And Irelia is one of them. Irelia, you need to really make sure you're playing properly into, because these days, Irelia did get a lot harder. Irelia succeeds in the fact that she will try to bounce wave states as much as she can. So anytime Irelia plays in a stacked wave, she'll be looking to try to fight you at all costs. So obviously, trying to hold your W after her W, trying to also avoid her E, is very crucial in being able to get the guarantee that you are going to win fights against her. Now, the better the Irelia player, the harder the matchup does become, but I think most Irelia players don't really play the matchup too well. And even if they do too, Renekton can just get level 6 and he can stat check Irelia to death, which is a guarantee as well, by the way, even if Irelia is playing good. However, I will say that dodging her E and making sure she doesn't get her Q resets is completely vital in being able to beat her. And when she does get Briar Rune King too, Irelia can feel even stronger. But the thing with Renekton is he can match Irelia's Briar Rune King by building his own. He can build a Black Cleaver or Eclipse. These items are completely great into Irelia as well. So again, that is practically when it comes to the matchup. Just try not to get hit by her E. Try to not combo into a W. Try to hold all your abilities off and have that patience in being able to fight her, because that will guarantee you the win that you need. And Irelia won't have the stats to really beat you. When it comes to runes, PTI or Conqueror are both good. You can play full damage into Irelia and completely one-shot her. You can play as a bruiser and give her a complete nightmare as well. It's really just down to your own preference and what you prefer as a player. Irelia is an easy matchup. Not too easy, but she is easy. And I think going up in higher elo can be more challenging, but obviously that's because Irelia is a very high skill ceiling based champion and she does require a lot to make work. So the better the Irelia player, the more caution there is to this matchup. So keep that in mind. You can get things like played steel caps too to put Irelia in the dirt, or you can also try to play for waves on your side and freeze and just make sure that Irelia doesn't get the room she needs to run you down. Next matchup, we have Jax. Jax is a skill matchup in my opinion. I could move it into challenging, but to be honest with you, I think Jax is practically a skill matchup these days. Now, Jax has always been a pretty interesting matchup because there are a lot of sides where people will say that Jax wins the matchup. Some will say Renekton hard wins the matchup. But in my opinion, I just think it's a case of whoever's better and whoever has like a better time in the game. Now, some things won't entirely direct on the way you play this matchup. Like having a jungler playing for Jax is quite a nightmare in my opinion. It can feel really hard to put Jax behind. And then once he does get the Triforce or Dusk and Dawn, Jax will start doing ridiculous damage and Renekton won't really be able to trade against him. So this matchup can feel a bit of like a kick in the balls sometimes. Like it can be very annoying to deal with. But earlier on, as long as you're avoiding Jax's E-trade by trying to space away from your caster minions and he's like trying to hit you, your minions will end up dealing damage to him. They won't get stunned. And then you're able to get a better trade against him. And then you can use your Q as well to try to maximize your push and able to get level 2 before him. If you get level 2 before Jax, Jax loses a shit ton of health, which then can lead you into taking W by level 2, or even taking W level 3 on a half health Jax. And you can obviously look for a more lethal trade after Jax uses E. Another thing to say about Jax as well is that Jax E is like a mind game in a way. Like you can mind game him under his own tower by activating your own W or just walking into him. So if you do that when Jax is like 50% health or even 40%, you can look to quickly one-shot him with like a WRQ combo with Ignite. Or just like any other trade as well if you're able to kill him at that health threshold. Another thing to note as well in this matchup is when Jax is playing in a stacked wave, Jax will have the upper hand in being able to beat you as he's able to stack his passive. If Jax is unable to stack his passive against you, Renekton does have the upper hand. So obviously if Jax is in a built up minion wave and he has his passive stacked, don't fight. If you're playing the wave on your side and your wave is in your favor, you can fight him and have more success in doing so. Playing off your empowered Q is also pretty good to whittle off his health as well. And when Jax does try to jump into you, you can use your E1 to space away against his E. And then once his E does go on cooldown, you can obviously dash back into him with E2 and go for a hard empowered W trade, which can help you win really hard when you're in a stacked wave. That is also another consideration to make. By level 6 as well, Jax, you can outplay these days as Jax needs to hit the ult on you. So you can try to, dash away from him if he's trying to land the ult on you. You can also look to E away from him completely after he ults. That way he doesn't gain any value in the fight. And then once you do have ult, you can obviously melt him down and get an easy fight into him. In terms of itemization, Black Cleaver is really great into his ultimate and just the overall stats that you're able to gain into Jax. Eclipse can also be very good as well if Renekton is ahead. So if you're able to get the Eclipse while being ahead, this can give Jax a lot of problems as well. But ultimately for me, I like going Black Cleaver and utility-based playstyles because this ends up giving me more power and control in the game. Because I'm not really trying to compete with Jax, who's better in side lane. I'm playing more or less to be a better team fighter and being a better utility-based pick. So that is what will end up beating Jax as an overall pick, and what I find to be the best strategy as well into him. Next matchup, we then have Jayce, which I probably will have in the challenging tier of matchups. Jayce can be quite bad when you're like a new Renekton player, or even playing against like a good Jayce player. Jayce will use his spacing to his advantage. He will try to use cannon form to hit you from bay, try and use EQs whenever you're isolated and like able to hit away from the minions. And then when you are trying to get towards Jayce, he can swap to his melee form as well and quickly knock you away, which can be quite annoying for Renekton. But the main trick that does make this challenging and does make this even like a competitive and good matchup for Renekton is Renekton can take E-Star into Jayce to hard cheese his cannon form early. With PTA, Renekton can do a E-trade into free auto attacks and E-out, and by level 2, Renekton can take W once his E's back up and end up bursting Jayce down and getting a level 2 kill. As long as you're trying to play bushes correctly and you are trying to play for push after Jayce is chunked out while trying to also not take too much damage in the process, this is practically a really strong winning situation for Renekton. You can take things like second wind and D-Shield too, which do give you more sustain and allow you to take more poke from Jayce. This also does allow you to get level 2 a lot easier, and you can also make sure you maximize on that level 2 kill angle too. Later on in the matchup, it then does just come down to like trying to go for quick combos, trying to go for EQWs before Jayce can E you away. Sometimes you will dash in and Jayce can RE, but if that does happen, try to just disengage and just try to not continue the fight. Make him waste the mana and like burn him out. By level 6, Renekton does retake the overall power in the matchup and 1v1. Renekton can rush boots as well, which gives him an easier time into Jayce, going played steel caps. Once you're level 6, you can do things like double dashing in front of Jayce. Once doing that as well, Jayce is unable to really peel you away from him. He will try to switch forms and knock you away, but he will not do it if you're in front of him. Jayce always wants to E you where you're towards your tower compared to his, because if he does that, he cuts all access in being able to escape from you. So let's say if you do E behind him and Jayce knocks you away, you'll actually end up on his side of the map, which then takes away his overall way of escape, and you're able just to pop your ult. You'll just be able to all in him at that moment in the fight. In terms of item rushes, going Stride Breaker is a great alternative as well. I find that you can actually go this as all the components are really good into Jayce, and getting the active as well does give Jayce less options of escape, so I think it can be really great into him. However, if you are snowballing or you're looking to go more full damage playstyle, I do think going Ghostblade is also a great item as well, as Jayce's squishy stats early game are unable to really make him sustain the damage against you. But overall, it is a matter of preference. I do like PTA as well. Some might take Conqueror, but I think PTA is more in line of what Renekton wants to do in this matchup. And later on in the game, you're just kind of using your tankiness and your bruiser ability to kind of overpower Jayce. Jayce will be trying to scale off his items and just trying to play off poke. So trying to play off your teammates, trying to play off early skirmishes, getting grubs, getting dragons, is very vital in being able to punish Jayce's scaling ability. Following on next, we now have Kayle. So Kayle, I would say, is also an easy matchup. Some people might put challenging, but for me, I think Kayle is quite an easy matchup. So the way this matchup is like, it is all on you as a player to go behind. Like, people like to make excuses and say like, oh, you know what? Kayle is so, Kayle's so hard, she'll just outscale you. She gets levels so much faster now. This champion is completely broken. But all I have to say to you is, why is she getting all these levels in the first place? Why is she able to lane and outscale you? The reason is because of your gameplay. And that's the truth, right? If you're shoving waves into Kayle perma, you're taking away the overall spacing you have being able to fight her in the laning phase. You're able to give her free minions to farm and get her items and scale. Furthermore, the matchup becomes doomed at that point. So it's all about adjusting your gameplay to make it more beneficial for yourself. And if you can abuse the fundamentals of playing off wave states, getting the wave back on your side of the map, you're able to get consistent kills onto Kayle, you're able to get your junglers ganking her, and overall, Kayle will just be a completely doomed pick into Renekton. And that's practically the truth of it. The only thing that I think Kayle can kind of overwhelm Renekton with earlier on is her rushing boots. Kayle will always get like swiftness boots early game, so you kind of need to match that by getting them yourself. And once you get them, Kayle won't really play the same way as she's able to. So you are able then to get like consistent E-dash trades onto her, because without boots, you will just obviously run away. Again, the boots, you are able to also increase your E speed, so you can constantly reach up to her. You can then stay on top of her while trading auto attacks. And that's where the matchup just gets really free at that point. And then you can get items like Ghostblade if you want to try and one-shot her, or you can get items like Stride Breaker or Cleaver, wherever it may be, right, that you are just able to completely lock her down and obviously be too tanky for her to deal with you. So overall, matchup I would say is pretty easy. It just requires like a little bit of foresight into how you play in wave states. Again, I had a video on that. Maybe I need to make a video too. Like, if you guys want me to make a video on how to play against scaling champions like Kayle or Nasus, let me know in the comment sections below, because I can provide you with that as like a material too, if you're curious. But anyways, back to the topic at hand. So, other than that, playing against Kayle in the mid to late game, Kayle will eventually obviously get a level. She will obviously scale up. And in those points in the game, it all just comes down to how much you're really doing. Kayle will eventually get to sit in side lane and scale. Once you do get that snowballing presence that you're able to gain from freezing on her, and obviously gain your kills onto her, taking first tower, you want to try and transition that lead to the rest of the map. You want to get dragons, you want to get grubs, heralds, you want to participate in team fights, you want to flank. Kayle won't be able to achieve the same much as you're able to do. Like, yes, she can alter carries, but obviously, you know, she's not going to have the damage, she's not going to have the utility that you're able to possess if you're ahead. So it's obviously playing smart and just playing off what you're able to achieve as a top laner at those points in the game. Proactivity is what creates success. So as long as you're being proactive and you're looking for a way to dominate and win, this matchup shouldn't really be that difficult for you. In terms of runes, PTA I think is the best rune, as you are playing to burst her down and one-shot her. Itemization, obviously like I said, Swiftness Boots or going like an early Plight Steel Caps can be very helpful. Then going Stridebreaker Rush can be decent too if you're willing to wait that extra bit of gold to obtain it. Or going item like Ghost Blade or Eclipse can be very helpful in being able to snowball. Obviously though, it really depends on your playstyle and is all up to you when it comes to that. Now, next matchup we have to talk about is Karma. Karma is actually a hard matchup. So, why is Karma a hard matchup, you may say? Isn't she just a support champion? Shouldn't you just be able to destroy her in one combo? No, because that's not how top lane or even playing Renekton works, unfortunately. I really wish people could pick Karma top lane into me and I could just eat them whole, but I'll be honest with you. All that happens is Karma gets the heal up, she stuns me, runs away, she throws Q at me, and she's just too tanky for me to really deal with because she rushes Frozen Heart or Maligence. So furthermore, Karma is actually quite a good counter pick into Renekton because she can stonewall Renekton, even able to not kill her. Kind of like the Aurora matchup in a way. The only difference is Karma has more of a luxury in going more of a tanky and more utility-based playstyle for her teammates. On top of the fact that her damage actually does also hurt, and she can also play really infuriating with her shield to get moon speed to run away from you, and she can also heal from her W, which can give her more sustain in the lane, which for example Aurora doesn't really have in comparison. So yeah, this matchup can feel really awful for Renekton. Renekton has to ensure that he can maybe kill on the first 3 levels by taking his E and W, level 1 and 2. Following on from that, it's all about just trying to do quick combos using Empowered W on her shield, and maybe even gain healing reduction. But to be honest with you, I'm not the biggest fan of trying to build that because you're wasting your gold into this item, which will just eventually overpower you by getting a Frozen Heart, or maybe even just a Maligence. So it feels like she's getting a quicker power spike compared to what I'm able to get. So all I can really do is just hope that I get ganks, try to, you know, kind of be crafty with my combos, and just try to look for an opening if it's available. By level 6, I can potentially kill her, but it comes with the ability of her trying to use her ultimate into being more aggressive against me, and then once I'm able to dash on top of her, I try to stun, shield break into ult, and just try to run her down if I'm able to do so. Again though, the matchup isn't so simple as it may seem, so it does just take a matter of just trying to get to mid to late game before things get a bit more clearer. At that point, as a champion, you will be a better champion in the mid to late game as your pick has a reliable stun, you're more tanky, and you are able to provide the utility that your team needs. In terms of builds, I think in a matchup like this, just going Black Cleaver first can be helpful, and then maybe get a Stridebreaker, or you can rush Stridebreaker into like Cleaver, Sterox, whatever it may be really for the game. I do find Stridebreaker can be very difficult to build into her, just due to the fact that you don't really have the damage needed, and the fact that it costs so much gold, it can feel really underwhelming, but in these matchups, it is mainly the biggest compromise we can make, because if we don't build this item, our mid game just feels utterly useless. In terms of runes, Conqueror, PTA, I think both can work pretty well. Conqueror works in this range matchup because we are able to stay in range reliably. The only problem is like, we just don't have enough damage and we don't have enough all-in power to really overthrow her. Even with PTA, she'll end up healing our damage and we're just not able to really get enough out of it. So overall, we're just kind of playing to scale and just playing to get our Stridebreaker before we're able to be a champion in the game. Moving on, we then have the Kayn matchup. So Kayn will actually make his debut here as a very easy matchup. So Kayn is a matchup I don't see often, but when I do, this champion just goes permanently 0-10 in my games. So Renekton, like, his only way Kayn can kill Renekton earlier on is trying to force a level 1 fight. Now, we can take Q and play on our minion wave, but we don't want to overcommit to the point where we go from, 100 to 0 straight away. Like, we want to take a little bit of time to also try and play for level 2, and then play it off using our abilities and our power spike to easily kill Kayn. So, as long as we avoid the level 1 cheese, gain level 2, 3 onwards, we'll practically kill Kayn in any combo. If Kayn tries to also escape from us and he's near a wall, we can also use our W to cancel his wall jump really easily. The biggest thing that makes this matchup a little bit annoying is that he can look to proxy. So obviously we want to try and take our chances away from him by just, trying to kill him at will if we can. Try and keep the wave states in the middle of the lane. If we try to freeze too hard, he will just go around and jump over the wall. But I think mainly he will probably try and get his proxy off. But at the same time, if Kayn wants to play for red form, he has to constantly fight you. And now, he probably will get his red form just for fighting you, even if he is going 0-10. That doesn't matter at that point because you are already fed enough with all the plates you're getting, all the kills you're getting as well in Golden XP, where you're able to get Black Cleaver, Blighted Ruin King, Eclipse, whatever item it may be really that you want to build that's on the screen right now. You can build all these items and you can just practically kill him really easily. As long as you have healing reduction, Kayn is not really a big problem. He's a lot easier to play in the jungle, as he's able to obviously get camps, he's able to live up more reliably, and obviously he has the luxury of ganking lanes as well to get his form. But furthermore though, Kayn I think is pretty easy. He doesn't really match up very well as a top lane champion into Renekton. He's not able to get the trades he wants, he gets melted in Renekton's ult, and he doesn't really have a lot going on for him outside of getting red form, and his team may be winning for him. PTA Conqueror too. When it comes to taking runes as well, Conqueror is just by far better as you're able to consistently proc it up with him jumping into you every moment's notice. So Conqueror is my rune of choice here. Next we have the Kennen matchup. Kennen will be more of a challenging matchup just due to the fact that I don't think Kennen really has the kill potential on Renekton. It's all about Kennen trying to get his passive stacks onto you. So if you are able to obviously mitigate that and play with Merc Treads, trying to, break out the stun easier, or avoiding his overall damage to get his stun proc, Kennen doesn't really do anything, and Renekton can also double dash into Kennen, and when Kennen tries to activate his, I think it's his W or E, wherever the electric rush is, I always forget, but when he tries to activate that, Renekton can like E onto him, W while he's in that animation, and then Kennen can't really get a full value electric rush, well, I don't know if it's called W, whatever it is, I'll probably have it on the screen right now, like he won't be able to get a full value of that off essentially, so you can end up, all-inning him from that, you can ult, you can like try to use Stride Breaker if you get it eventually, and Kennen just really doesn't have any opportunities to really get away from you. And if you are trying new tech like Zeke's Convergence as well, Zeke's also prevents him from being able to move after your ult, so all these give you a higher way of being able to kill him more consistently, and Kennen can't really get you off of him. So as long as you're going like D-Shield Second Wind, mitigating against his poke early, doing quick combos, not getting stunned, buying the tenacity as well, Kennen's never really a problem. The only thing Kennen really excels at in the game is getting really good flanks off, so trying to always ping his whereabouts on the map, trying to ping locations where he's going to flank from, that is what matters the most. And if we can peel him away by using our W, trying to slow him down before he's able to reach our teammates, that is ultimately what will end up helping us counter Kennen and not making him a difficult matchup whatsoever. Next champion, we have Kled. I will rate Kled in the skill matchup because Kled players are chaotic, right? Whenever there's a very chaotic champion, it's like, even they don't know what they're doing. And when they don't know what they're doing, you kind of don't know what to do either, sometimes. But to be honest though, Kled is a very linear champ. He's not really that in-depth. So when it does come to like playing against Kled, he's actually not that difficult to understand. Kled will often throw his Q when you're walking towards minions or walking towards him. So most often we want to click to the side, go side to side, bait his Q. And then we look to auto Q him or just try to trade against him. And then when Kled hasn't got his W up either after using our minions, Kled is also an easier target to trade against. So most often we want to fight him when his W is on cooldown. Another thing Kled will often do too is he will try to often engage with E and Q at the same time. So as long as we're doing this like side to side movement where we're weaving in and out, Kled will eventually throw his EQ and miss. And when he ends up missing as well, he's not able to get his second dash as he has to hit a champion. So in being able to do so, we can obviously look for our all-ins off that point or like our heavy trades. And once he's demounted too, we can then wait for our W and E to come back up. And once we have it available, we can jump onto him and one-shot him. Now, the biggest problem that I will say about this matchup is actually demounting him. Kled has this strategy where he kind of wants people to demount him. So in the first few levels, Kled is very weak. You can actually demount him super easy, but the problem with that is that once you do demount Kled, Kled has instant wave prio. You cannot touch the minion wave without Kled running in your face, and if he's able to do that with his W active, Kled can quickly gain his mount back really fast, and then once he gets it back up, he can combo into you with his mounted form and potentially even kill you. So just because you demount Kled earlier on doesn't mean that you're going to kill him. I just want to throw that out there. You always want to make sure that you hold your W after he demounts, and then once he falls off, you then W right after, and then you try to like kill him if you're able to. If you're not able to kill him, simply just give him the wave prio, try and like just, you know, play more passive, play till he gets back on his mount, because once you do demount him right after that, he's not actually able to get back on his mount for quite a certain amount of time, which will probably be on the screen right now just for clarification. So again, if we're not falling into that little trap of trying to go for a kill on Kled at that point, Kled will be a really easy matchup. And the only thing we really need to look out for is him trying to get R flanks just like a Kennen would. So if we can ping his whereabouts at all times and we can even tank the R hit for our team, Kled won't really be able to do anything with that. Renekton will always outtrade Kled with things like W max. And overall, Renekton is a pretty solid pick into Kled, I would say at least, if you know what you're doing. Renekton's wave clear is also a really big strength too, I will add on, as Kled can't really match the wave clear without a Tiamat, but Renekton can always get that insta push with his Q and his E. So if you are trying to cheese backs or cheer recalls, Renekton is really great at doing so too into a matchup like this. In terms of itemization, played Steel Cap's Rush can be really good in being able to counter Kled's auto attack playstyle. Getting a Black Cleaver too does make you pretty tanky and have the haste that you need to constantly trade against him. And items like Eclipse or Briar Rune King are both really good items too in being able to one-shot him in a more damage-based playstyle. In terms of runes, PTA or Conqueror, both are really good and just depend on the preference and whatever you prefer. For me, I like Conqueror a little bit more, as I get more all-in damage post level 6, and that's when most often I find my ways of being able to kill him. Another off-meta pick that I will add here in this tier list is actually Lee Sin. And Lee Sin will actually be a very easy matchup. Sometimes you will play against a Lee Sin top lane and you're just like, what the fuck does Lee top do? Now, I've played against Lee top in the past in my so many years of playing League, and Lee was always like a pretty easy matchup for Renekton because Renekton's burst damage is just way too much for Lee Sin to really deal with. Now, I think Lee Sin did get buffed recently on his W2, which can make him more of a laning pick again, with the fact that he can have a lot more sustain into playing. However, if you do play against Lee Sin, you should have no problem in being able to break his shield, and the fact that you're able to get items like Eclipse and Black Cleaver, it just completely overwhelms him, and your damage is just way too much to really deal with him. Lee Sin as a laning pick doesn't really do the same stuff as a jungle Lee Sin, so there's nothing like to really warn you about when it comes to mid to late game, other than the fact of trying to peel your teammates away from his flash kick. Itemization, you can practically build any of the items on the screen right now. They're all pretty good into Lee Sin. And in terms of runes, you can go PTA or Conqueror depending on your overall playstyle. Okay, so moving on, the next champion we will be talking about now is K'Sante. So K'Sante, I think, is more challenging than it is a skill matchup. Some people do like to say this matchup is very hard, but I think when you do watch pro play often, they would pick Renekton into K'Sante, and the main reason they did that is because, like I said before, with some of the other harder matchups, Renekton's a really good blind pick, and he's just a very good, like, stalemate pick you can pick as well into matchups like K'Sante. So, essentially, Renekton can play for a farm lead, he can obviously play safe enough to avoid fighting him. He can obviously serve as a deterrent to stopping K'Sante from trying to get ahead early game, which obviously later on in the game as well, as the game progresses, Renekton will actually be a way stronger pick than K'Sante because he has more ways to be able to play the mid to late game, and he has a lot easier of a time in being able to function as a champion at that stage of the game. So if you are playing in like a competitive environment, this matchup doesn't need to be really that hard of a matchup to deal with. A lot of it is just accepting your lane situation in the game. You're not really going to kill K'Sante consistently. He's a very hard champion to really put behind because he's so tanky. He has very low cooldowns. So most often, if you are just playing to, you know, get that farm lead, trying to get that first item before him, which is mainly Black Cleaver, you don't really need to worry too hard about it. But if we are in solo queue and we are trying to obviously play to kill him, play to try and gain advantage, This matchup is incredibly difficult. Our main way of being able to really look for an opening is, as long as we don't tank his W damage and we don't trade into it, we do have a lot more opportunities in being able to trade auto attacks back and use the rest of our abilities. So most typically, if you're walking into him and he starts charging his W, you want to instantly E to the side. If you do stay in that position against K'Sante, he will shred a lot of your health. And most often too, when he is gaining that like zone and he's getting his combos off, he can ult right after and reset his entire cooldowns, meaning that he's able to get another W up and he's able to do even more damage than he was doing before. So most often, we're planning to avoid his W. We're trying to obviously, you know, click side to side, trying to avoid his Qs. And then when he is missing that third Q, we can look for a quick trade as well. If K'Sante does miss his W and he overshoots on our side of the map, that can also give us a big trading window. And if we do have ultimate as well, we can pop our ultimate. We can try to win the fight. Obviously, before we go for that, we probably need to get him around the 30 to 40% health mark, because if we do it from full health, K'Sante will just win. More than often, if he does ult, we want to try to just disengage right away, because we don't really want to be hard fighting against K'Sante. This champion is, like I said, it can be very challenging because the way you kill him is not so easy. Like, I can't really give you a specific way you kill him. It's more on K'Sante to misplay and to, you know, play his own fundamentals poorly, and you playing off ganks and using your own mechanics correctly in order to really kill him. Now, if we can't kill him, it's not the end of the world, because building a Black Cleaver first is pretty good. And if we do move on to the builds overall, I will say just going Plate Steel Caps Rush is better to go for. Now, if the enemy does have a lot of CC, we can delay our Boots Rush and just go straight into Cleaver. So going into Black Cleaver first is quite a no-brainer. In the past, I was doing Blade of Ruin King into this matchup, but being that he can just get full mail, it just doesn't really feel right that you can just go Blade of Ruin King into it, because his armor is just benefiting him more than it is for ourselves. And I feel like just having a Cleaver to help shred his armor of your teammates and having the extra cooldown reduction as well does play a really big chance in Renekton in being able to kill him. Later on in the game, we can get an item like Spirit of Sojourn as well, and funnily enough in this matchup, Renekton actually does outscale K'Sante in 1v1s, and it's mainly because of the level up from Renekton's R. Every rank, Renekton's magic damage increases, and when we do get an item like Spirit of Sojourn, the additional damage that we're getting on top of our ultimate does become really hectic for K'Sante to really deal with. So when you are in those 1v1s from level 11 onwards with maybe 2 items or so, Renekton does start overpowering K'Sante a lot easier than he was before. So the way we have to treat this matchup is kind of like a backwards way of playing than we normally would have. So Renekton just plays to scale. K'Sante needs to play early game really hard. He needs to try and go for his all-ins a lot earlier. If he's unable to do so and Renekton can play safe enough, Renekton will most typically get the upper hand when it comes to playing around objectives, playing team fights, and playing side lane. And obviously, if you're doing the builds on the screen right now, like going Sterix as well in your build, or maybe even like starting to IMIze more like tanky as well, making him deal less damage towards you, K'Sante really won't have a chance against you. And this matchup can feel easier later on, but it also does rely on your teammates and just how good you can play in the laning phase. In terms of runes as well, I think Conqueror is kind of a no-brainer. I think just the raw power from Conqueror and what it's able to provide early game in terms of your Q poke and just like your all-ins as well, I think Conqueror is just a better choice. You could also argue Press the Attack is also great later on in terms of getting like your Spear of Sojourn and having Black Cleaver together. However, I just think having Conqueror just makes more sense for the trades earlier on, and while I am saying that it's harder to kill him, it still doesn't mean that Conqueror isn't any more relevant. Like, Conqueror, I find, is the most consistent rune to K'Sante, and that is what I overall prefer. So, the next annoying tank champion that I want to talk about that I also find quite challenging is Malphite. So, Malphite to me is, and for a lot of people, is obviously a very annoying matchup. Statistically too, Malphite is a pretty good pick into Renekton because Malphite can play safe enough to avoid Renekton's early game, and if Malphite can make out a laning phase and he doesn't give away too many kills, Malphite can use the ultimate to impact the map and impact team fights a lot better than Renekton can in his own playstyle. So I would say Malphite is a lot more challenging because even if you are beating Malphite, if you're 3-0, you take first turret, if you do all the things correctly, it mainly does depend on your teammates and how good they are at avoiding Malphite ultimate, because one good Malphite ult can change an entire game, and that can be like the most frustrating thing when it comes to this matchup. But what I will say too is that this matchup is definitely in Renekton's favour early on. Renekton does have the tools to tower dive Malphite by level 3 to level 6, depending on how good he plays it. Malphite annoyingly does kind of outscale in the fact he builds a lot of armor. His overall damage that he's able to deal is also very good into Renekton. So more than often, it is a matchup that we don't really want to be looking to pick Renekton into, but it's not the end of the world too. Renekton's wave clear is super good in being able to help drain Malphite's mana. Malphite can't really press a giant advantage in the matchup earlier on due to Renekton's wave clear, his poke. His armor shred also instantly destroys his shield, which subsequently lowers his armor. If you don't know how that works, it's based on his W and his passive. I think it's his W passive, but regardless as well, you can lower his armor that easily. And then right after that too, you can use an empowered E as well to lower his armor even more. And if you're rushing an item like Black Cleaver and then using your ult on top of that, Renekton's damage will suffice and it will actually feel pretty good into Malphite. However, overall, that is all we can really do in this matchup. It is more or less just trying to burn his mana out. If he takes Comet, we go second wind D-Shield. If he goes Grasp, we just go D-Blade, and we can take Ignite as well into these playstyles. I do think Ignite Renekton works pretty well. You can kill Malphite pretty consistently by level 3 if you're playing your waves correctly. If you are trying to go for push and trying to poke him down between level 1 and 2, that can absolutely work. But more than often, this matchup just kind of requires like kind of just avoiding his attack speed slow. You want a W if he lands E. You just want to space away from him, get all your abilities off, and then obviously wait until the attack speed slow wears off. And then once that you're able to get your abilities back up, you try and trade against Malphite again. With that being said, in terms of runes, Conqueror, again, just like Cassante, I feel like it's the best rune of choice here. In terms of builds and itemization, I think going Black Cleaver Rush is obviously the best item. I don't really see any of the items being any better for Renekton in this matchup. I would just say Black Cleaver Rush into Stride Breaker or maybe Cleaver Zeeks if you want like a harder impact and just like a quicker power spike. And then obviously you can get an item like Spirit of Sojourn, which can feel good if you're confident in being able to dominate side lane and also be a lot stronger as a fighter champion in that game. But if you do need to be more frontline to kind of match Malphite, Sterix Gauge also doesn't hurt, and then going your regular tank items. Now moving on, another matchup that I do want to talk about, which isn't really a top lane pick, and I know my list is looking a bit strange with some picks, but I kind of just want to fill in the blanks of some of these like rows, and I do see like some of these playstyles also crop up, so I think I will try and talk about them. And one of those is actually Master Yi. So Master Yi, I would say, is probably in the easy category. So the reason I list this here is because there is like a trend of Master Yi top players recently. You have some people like, I think it's SS Monster or something like that. You have Cowsep. You have some like top Master Yi players that are kind of incentivizing this wave of top lane Master Yi players. And essentially they go Ignite with Howler Blades. And their whole objective is trying to dive you by level 2 and just trying to snowball against you and then eventually outscale you with items like Blade of Ruin King, Rage Blade, Titanic. Things of this nature really, which can be very problematic, and it can even feel pretty confusing too on like how to play against this champion, because Master Yi does have some underrated mechanics that can help him into the Renekton matchup. For instance, Master Yi's W can block Renekton's W damage completely, or at least like take some of the damage away with the damage reduction. So while you can cancel his overall healing, he can obviously use that as an ability to time on your W and take your damage away. And then he has his auto attacks, he has his E true damage, his Q. He can do all these things to kind of get your health down, and like you're just kind of surprised in like the way it works, and you know, it can throw you off guard in a way. So most typically in this matchup, level 1, you obviously don't want to trade too hard of auto attacks. You don't want to try and like take W start if he's trying to cheese you. If he Qs onto you, you can also W, walk away. Master Yi's objective is trying to dive you, so as long as you're keeping your health up and you make sure that you have your W skilled and you do your turret if you try to hard push, which most certainly he will do, you can then obviously end up stunning him and end up getting the kill onto him and preventing him from the cheese, which is, I don't know if I have a clip on the screen right now, but I did actually do that to this Master Yi player in particular, which is SS Monster. But aside from that, Renekton, if he does manage to survive the cheese earlier on, Renekton will just end up kind of dominating this matchup with runes like PTA or Conqueror. Renekton's stat check is way too hard for Master Yi to really deal with. It's just more or less that if you are weak-sided and Master Yi does obviously get a couple kills onto you, this matchup can feel really awful. So obviously in those situations as well, you can rush Blade Steel Caps to take away some of his damage, and rushing even items like Black Cleaver is completely fine. However, I would find that in a matchup like this, you do want to completely stomp. So going items such as Eclipse, going Blade of Ruin King, items of this nature, can feel very helpful in being able to get that burst damage onto Master Yi and prevent him from overpowering you. And when it comes to team fights too, Masti is obviously looking to try and assassinate and kill the squishiest targets first. Renekton is quite often a solid pick into Masti due to the fact that his W can just lock him down. And if you're able to stun Masti in a fight and tell your teammates to just focus Masti E, he's unable to really do anything, and you'll be able to kill Masti with ease. So I will just obviously leave this champion here because, again, I'm seeing it creep up a lot lately, and people are asking me too, how do you play against Masti? Most typically, just don't die to his level 1 and 2 cheese, play passive if you have to, just reach level 3. And at that point as well, the matchup will feel a lot easier, and if you can just like use your cooldowns effectively, and also build accordingly, Masti won't really have the damage or the playstyle to really deal with Renekton. Next, we're talking about an actual top laner pick now, which I find to be quite a good matchup for me, and that is Mordekaiser. So, for a lot of people, this champion can kind of range between challenging, skill matchup, and easy. Now, in my opinion, I think this matchup is more or less an easy matchup, and the reason is that Renekton's kit, it's just completely designed to counter Mordekaiser. Mordekaiser doesn't really have a lot in his kit to stop Renekton from, you know, doing playstyles such as W max. Renekton can obviously use minions and just use like champions to take away Mordekaiser's overall damage dealt to him. Mordekaiser can only look for an ultimate to try and obviously get the isolation and try to get a good fight against Renekton. But even then, Renekton has 2 dashes. You know, he can have his flash to avoid Mordekaiser's Q damage, his ease. And Renekton's stats from his ultimate as well give him a lot of power to actually duel Mordekaiser in his ultimate. So, more than often, I think Renekton's a really great pick, and as long as Renekton holds W for Mordekaiser W, this matchup is not even a problem. And when you are going W max 2, that simply means you can get multiple Ws off in a fight, and Mordekaiser essentially can't go toe-to-toe with you. So this makes the matchup a lot easier, and it also takes away a lot of power that Mordekaiser's actually able to have in the laning phase. Level 1 and 2 as well, Renekton can win fights against Mordekaiser with Conqueror. It is a matchup that I like to take Q level 1 and I like to take Conqueror Ignite. If Mordekaiser tries to fight me level 1, which he likes to do to bully his opponents, I will most often kill Mordekaiser if I'm standing in the minion wave, and Mordekaiser just like that loses all of his potential kill pressure in the laning phase that he would normally have in sort of matchups. And from that point onwards, I just do short combos, I just try and burst him down from his W shield, and I also try and play waves on my side of the map. And if Mordekaiser misses his E and I'm able to stay on top of him, Mordekaiser is just a sitting duck for me to constantly kill. So this matchup in practice is quite easy, I would say. I don't think it's really a difficult matchup if you are patient. In terms of runes, I do like taking PTA or Conqueror. Obviously, it's down to preference, but being that, as I said, I like to find level 1. Conqueror is my rune of choice here. In terms of items, Eclipse can feel super good in being able to block his Q damage a lot easier. On top of the fact as well, the cheap gold and the AD that you're getting from Eclipse also feels really nice to put Mordekaiser behind. Going Black Cleaver also isn't that bad because the hates that you're able to get. So obviously, if you are W maxing, you can obviously go either Cleaver or Eclipse. Both are pretty good. It just is a matter of preference. I will build both items together, and I will eventually also build an item like Sterix just for team fighting. And the better team fighter that I also do become, the worse that Mordekaiser also performs at that point in the game, because he'll never be able to 1v1 me, and he'll never be able to out team fight me either. Next, when it comes to challenging matchups, we do now have Nasus. So Nasus is kind of like Kayle. So this matchup can range between like either hard to easy depending on the MMR. And in lower MMR, I feel like the matchup is a lot harder just due to the fact that people don't know how to play wave states. And because games are most often going between, you know, 30 to 50 minutes potentially in a long game, Nasus is able to constantly split push, he's able to get stacks, and he's able to be more of a threat than he would be in higher MMR, where games end a lot easier, surrenders happen a lot more often, and Nasus doesn't have the scaling power or time to actually become a champion. And when it comes to Renekton matchup too, I do think this matchup isn't that difficult if you are patient. If you're able to play the wave state on your side of the map, Nasus has to constantly walk up or he has to burn mana with his E to reset the wave. Nasus doesn't have strong enough wave clear to really stop Renekton from freezing, and if Nasus does waste all his mana, obviously Renekton can then punish him by forcing him to back, or if Nasus gets impatient and tries to also walk up to push the wave, Renekton can just burst his whole health bar down and also win level 6 fights. So I do find this matchup quite easy and in Renekton's favour, as long as you're able to play wave states correctly. Now, a big problem people do have in this matchup is they typically don't know how to pace themselves in the first few waves. If Renekton can just simply Let Nasus push level 1 by letting Nasus hit him, which means that all your minions will target Nasus, and in that moment, his own minions will keep attacking my own minions, for example, as Renekton. So if you're able to do that, you get a quicker push on your side. You can then obviously guarantee playing to level 2 to 3. The wave state will start pushing towards your side, and that's where you can able to play a lot more aggressive into him and get an early kill. And when you are playing a playstyle like Ignite 2, where you are trying to get kills consistently to put Nasus behind, it is super crucial in doing these things and able to get a consistent play pattern. Another way that we can also play into Nasus is that we can push the first 2 waves as well. Pushing the first 2 waves means that on the 3rd wave, the cannon wave will come, and subsequently from that point, the waves coming after the cannon wave will help push the wave from his side to your side a lot more easier. And at that point as well, being level 3, we can also start doing more heavier trading patterns. We can also try and burst Nasus more consistently, and we can also time his wave push with our jungle ganks, meaning if my jungler does start bot side and he is going from bot to top, we can obviously create a gank from that opportunity, which can help put Nasus behind, and if Nasus doesn't take flash as well, he does become quite an easy kill. And at that point, it's kind of just doing the same thing over and over again. And when you do obviously eventually kill Nasus between level 6, and then if you're killing him also around the time you're taking first tower, we want to use our lead to just dominate the map and try and be more of a impactful champion and player compared to Nasus. Nasus will obviously eventually outdamage Renekton in 1v1s, but you're not really playing for 1v1s when you're against Nasus. You're playing to dominate and impact the map, and if Nasus is split pushing and he's trying to get your tier 2 to 3 turret, you get your teammates to group up and you take Nasus off the map. You all focus him, kill him, and then you go to an objective, or you go to the next fight that is available. You play him this way and you constantly take away Nasus's tools to split push side lane and win his own game. For the Nasus matchup as well, I think going Black Cleaver Rush is pretty practical here. I think it's probably like the best item to really go, as you're shredding his armor in his ultimate, you're shredding his overall armor that he's rushing against you, and I just think it's a very consistent item, and Nasus won't really have the damage to really overpower you. Some people do like to go Eclipse as well, but I feel like Eclipse kind of does fall off in a way against Nasus, and when we are playing more for that mid to late game as well, where we want to be a better team fighter, I personally think going utility items like Cleaver Stridebreaker feels very good for me personally, and I like the idea of just being able to have still a really good early game into a really good mid to late game, and also having an item like Stridebreaker prevents Nasus from also reaching your teammates. And then we also do max abilities like our W after 3 points Q, which will make the matchup a lot easier, and our ability to also peel off Nasus from our teammates. Now, the next champion I will talk about too, which is quite an uncommon pick, I would say, is Neeko. Neeko kind of pops up every now and then, and it's mainly just people like playing it out because they see Baus play it or some other like one trick. And I would say this matchup is quite easy. Back in the day, she would do a lot of damage, and she would kind of be similar to Aurora, which used to make the matchup kind of hard. But with how the game has changed and like how Neeko has also been changed, I feel like this matchup isn't that difficult. If you do rush Merc Treads and you do play second wind D-Shield, you can start like obviously dashing in, you'll land on top of her, and at that point, she will land a stun on top of you as well. But you can buffer your W in that moment, and then Neeko is unable to use her W to escape, and you can just sit on top of her, out-trade her, and then when she is between that 40 to 30% health range, you can go for one-shots under her own turret. What makes Renekton very favoured in this matchup as well is that Renekton is way too tanky for Neeko to really deal with. Neeko may get a good ultimate, and she can obviously mind game you with a passive, and also her ability to gank other lanes with passive, but as long as you're being very aware of like where she is at all times, pinging on the map, counting minions, Neeko shouldn't really be a problem. And if she does ult as well, we can instantly shield break and even kill her before she's able to get her ultimate off in team fights. So I personally think this matchup's very easy. In terms of items against Neeko, I think you can really just build anything. It really is a matter of preference. You can go full damage into Neeko and play for one-shots. You can play tanky and bruiser, preventing Neeko from doing damage to you. It's really a matter of just like whatever you prefer. And in terms of rooms, I think PTA is quite a good choice because you're able to get really good training patterns off. You can do a lot of burst damage. And Neeko won't really be able to do anything to you post Mercury Treads power spray. An off-meta pick that I also forgot to talk about is Naafiri when it comes to the tier list. I think Naafiri is quite an easy matchup. Naafiri is actually quite a good champion top lane because she can cheese a lot of players with Howler Blades tech. So most of the time Naafiri can like poke out with Q, and then obviously when you're low enough, she will also try to E in, proc Howler Blades, try and Q again and go for kills. And then if you are obviously trying to get your trading pattern back against her, she will end up Wing and disengaging away from you. Now with Renekton's really good into Neferi because if she does try to jump in, Renekton has a lot of burst damage to really fend off against her, which makes it a very dangerous play pattern for Neferi to really engage into. And Renekton also has the luxury as well, trying to double dash in, forcing Neferi to W instantly, which is quite a long cooldown. And then once she obviously comes out of a W, Renekton can also prep W as well after that point and try and burst her down. And most often as well, just his wave clear, just his overall, beefy and bruiser stats are just way too much for Neferi to really deal with. And when Neferi is trying to play to kill other targets within teamfights, Renekton can peel super well against her, as he's able to use his W, obviously to one-shot her when she lands. He's able to break her shield if she gets a reset. There's a lot at stake for Neferi that can be very problematic, and Neferi has to always play to avoid Renekton. And as long as Renekton can be included and he does involve himself to stop Neferi, Neferi can't really do anything when it comes to playing against Renekton. In terms of runes, I like PTA. I think PTA is a good choice. Conqueror isn't so bad too. I just think PTA is better with the training windows that you get and you're playing off your E and W cooldowns. And going items like Eclipse, Ghostblade, Cleaver, all of which are great on the screen right now. It is just a matter of preference and just whatever you prefer. Another off-meta, but also a matchup played in higher MMR that I do see sometimes is Nidalee top lane. Nidalee top lane, I will probably put more in the... where do I put this? I would say it can be challenging for people, but to be honest, if you are a pretty good top laner, like if you can play into Cassio, Aurora, like you can know the strategy of playing into a ranged lane bully, then Nidalee will kind of fall off a lot more easier into the easier category, I would say. Renekton is probably Nidalee's hardest counter, I would say, or at least one of them. Renekton doesn't have the damage necessarily to easily kill Nidalee early, but when he does get level 6 and he does get an Iron Light Plated Steel Caps to mitigate against Nidalee's damage, the matchup does become pretty auto-win, and Nidalee won't ever have the damage to really deal with you. If you're playing around your minions, you're avoiding your Qs of your dashes and your great movement. If you're able to, prevent grass procs, or at least playing D-Shield Second Wind to take away a lot of that damage, Nidalee won't really be doing anything with her pick. She'll never outscale you, she'll never outdamage you, she'll never outside lane you, out-teamfight you. There's nothing Nidalee really does good. Nidalee is probably similar to Lee Sin, where this champion falls off a cliff. She only is good for one purpose, and that's laning phase. Or at least the start of the game if she's a jungler. And if she's not able to play her champion in a way to abuse these points of the game, Nidalee just completely falls off and she feels like a really terrible pick. And against Renekton as well, I think Renekton just has to play passive till level 6. And when Nidalee is starting to get too overconfident and try to fight you at level 6, Renekton can just easily stat check her and just easily win the matchup. Furthermore, I think Nidalee's pretty easy. You can play any rune into this matchup. I think Conqueror does feel a bit good to me, as I'm able to fight her in a Cougar form a lot easier. I'm able to have a lot more stat checking damage as well. And going Black Cleaver for me feels like a better item as well, as I'm able to stay on top of her at all times. I have the haste, I have the AD, health. All my stats are just way too much to really deal with her. And after that point, I can just build utility items, or I can just go into more damage items too. Basically, whatever I prefer. Now, when it comes to talking about real top lane champions, next we will talk about Olaf, which I find to be quite a skill matchup. Now, Olaf does range between easy and skill matchup for me. It's a skill matchup in the way that you are playing off of his axes. If Olaf does miss an axe, Renekton can easily abuse that because his axe cooldown is quite long. I think it's even 10 seconds to 9 seconds earlier on. I think it drops down towards 5 after maxing it. I might not be correct on that one. But point being, if Olaf misses an axe, he loses all value instantly. Him landing the axe gives him armor pen, it gives him a burst of moon speed if he's playing things like approach velocity, and just the fact that you're slowed too, he can run into you. But more than often, I think Renekton's training pan and his overall burst damage doesn't really give Olaf the trades that he's looking for. Olaf can throw a Q into you, but all you need to do is auto empower W, auto Q and E out, or you can also auto Q, auto empower W, then just simply disengage. And if you E once and then you wait for him to throw Q again and then he starts throwing it, you can E2 away as well, which will make him waste even more mana and give him less of an opportunity to land that Q. And if you play this way and you just play the wave on your side, Olaf can't really run you down. And it's kind of similar to Darius, where Darius can only really kill you when the wave state is on his side, because he'll play Ghost, he'll play to just run you down off his his bleed stacks. In Olaf's case, it's his Q, slows, and that's all he can really do. But if you're playing the wave stand on your side, you're playing for those short combos, eventually at the 30 to 40% mark, Renekton can simply one-shot him, and if you're holding your W at that point for his own W, Olaf will just get melted instantly, and you will be able to get the kill. By level 6, the matchup does become a little bit more challenging, as he does have his ultimate to break out of your W. But again, if we're keeping wave stats on our side, and we're planning to do a hit and run playstyle where we do a short trade, we get out, in and out, Olaf will eventually try and ult when he's low enough, and then we'll obviously have the damage just to fight him up front. We can ignite him, and we can also secure a kill a lot easier. Olaf doesn't really do much when it comes to mid to late game fights. Obviously, Olaf will try to look towards skirmishing and trying to catch off any squishes that he's able to get to. Obviously, at that point in the game, we want to just try and play to burst him down. Olaf is very weak when it comes to burst damage, and especially with his lifesteal type builds. So if you're able to burst him down fast enough with your teammates and your item builds, Olaf's not really able to do anything. In terms of items, you can go things like Cleaver. Obviously, it feels like the same thing as I'm talking about it, but I'm trying to just like paint a picture that Cleaver's just a really solid item on Renekton. Obviously, Eclipse is really good too if you want a more combative playstyle where you're trying to do heavy trades and you're trying to block his damage as well. You can also go an item like Ghost Blade as well, or Blade of Ruin King. It really is a matter of preference and just how the matchup is going for you, but you can hard destroy Olaf to a point where he's unable to play the game. PTI or Conqueror are both good. Conqueror opens up the opportunity to win extended fights, even from level 1, if you play it correctly with bone plating and also Q start. PTI is obviously more consistent just for your overall training patterns and just the ability to burst them down. So it is just a matter of preference when it comes to that. Next champion, we have Ornn, and I would say Ornn is probably more of a challenging matchup / skill matchup. I will probably put challenging because just like Malphite, Ornn always has the ability to come back because his scaling is actually pretty good. His ultimate is able to create a giant amount of CC for his teammates as well as his brittle proc. Ornn can also upgrade items for his teammates, so obviously he can also, give them additional stats to help them scale into the game. Overall, Ornn can be very annoying, and his laning phase can also be quite challenging. If we fight next to walls, Ornn will be able to knock us up, he'll be able to do a lot more damage with his combo. If we play around his Q, same story really happens. So obviously this matchup is kind of like, you're playing off Qs, you're playing to do short combos, you're trying not to get hit by his W. If he tries to W, you want to sidestep or look to E. So a lot of it is just kind of like anticipating how he's going to use his abilities and playing against it. When it comes to level 6, Renekton does hard win in 1v1s. It just comes down to you Wing his ultimate. So you can, let's say, if Ornn tries to use ult in a fight after you do like a combo against him, as long as you hold your W, Ornn will try to then ult, and then you can use your W to also stun him within his R cast. If you do that successfully, Ornn won't be able to R2, meaning that he doesn't get the knockup and he doesn't get the additional damage, and the matchup just becomes really easy in the 1v1, which is most often able to allow you to kill him. So furthermore, it is just like a matchup where you're playing off just being more smarter, you're playing off for quick combos, and you are playing to take away his kit by using your E's correctly. When it comes to just like mid to late game, obviously you're pinging out his whereabouts, you're trying to stun him from being able to use ultimate, and you're also trying to use your armor shred from Black Cleaver or your E to kind of melt his armor and also help kill him a lot easier. Obviously, the main priority in the tank matchups, though, is just playing team fights accordingly. So if you do need to dive onto the backline and try and one-shot them, that is obviously very much required, as you're trying to obviously take away Ornn's overall value from his carriers. However, if Ornn is like a primary target and he is trying to set up a play, trying to stop him from doing that is very vital in being able to win a team fight. For runes, Conqueror, I think is a no-brainer here. I personally like Conqueror a lot more. Just like Malphite or Cassandra, you can go a similar build as well, though, in a way that you go Sojin if you're ahead. But if you are playing more of a front line, Cleaver Sterox is practically really good, and I probably would recommend that most of the time if you are against him. And with that said, there's not really much else to Ornn. It's obviously just quite a mechanically inducing matchup, and it really does reward you if you, play to avoid his abilities. And I think that's really it when it comes to the Ornn matchup, necessarily. Next matchup, we have Pantheon, which I would say is a skill matchup. Pantheon can also be quite a hard matchup in my book. I don't really like this matchup as a Renekton player. I think what I don't like about it the most is that Pantheon's cooldowns are just so much lower, to the point where Pantheon could just like hard poke you down. He can hard snowball early game if you, take your mind off the matchup or you're not like really focused enough within the game. And Pantheon, there's a lot of room to really go wrong. So I think this matchup is more or less a skill matchup, though. It is really who plays better. You obviously just don't let Pantheon play his game. You just want to avoid his Qs. When he has obviously no empowered ability, you want to try and trade him when you can. You don't want to W his E obviously as well. That's a very important thing. You want to try and get behind him, stun him, and then disengage as well. Going played Steel Caps Rush is 100% necessary, otherwise Pantheon can one-shot you. as well. If you are able to snowball and you're having a better laning phase as well, you can obviously just rush Black Cleaver as well, which I find to be very helpful. And most of the time, I think it's just my item of choice as well. But mainly you're just playing for Plate Steel Caps Rush, you're playing for your level 6. And when Pantheon does obviously miss his empowered ability, you can try to punish him and pop your ultimate. What makes Renekton really good at level 6 against Pantheon is the fact that Pantheon doesn't really have a real ult for the fight. He does gain armor pen stats, which is obviously very big for him. However, it's not really a lot until rank 3. And as long as you have your ultimate up as well, you're getting a ton of stats up in the fight, which is very important in having success. And most often you do overwhelm Pantheon as well, to the point where he's unable to successfully beat you. This matchup requires a lot of your ultimate being up most of the time, so you are always playing for the fact that your ultimate cooldown is pretty vital to beating him. And obviously having a good set of pings is also very important to alert your teammates where Pantheon is at all times. He can gank bot lane, he can gank mid, so as long as you're playing waves accordingly, you're shoving in waves when he's missing. You're obviously playing the wave on your side when you are trying to scale and you are trying to look for short trades. That is also very important as well in being able to get a good matchup into Pantheon. But essentially, yeah, I personally under the school of thought that Pantheon is pretty awful. I know some other people are too, including 3-in-1. I know he says that he doesn't like the Pantheon matchup early. And I do also play Pantheon as well as a pseudo counter pick, I would say, into Renekton. I do try to hard abuse his early game, and I do try to obviously impact the map enough as well as Pantheon. So as long as like you're not playing into Pantheon's game and you're able to survive the first 6 levels, Pantheon doesn't really become that difficult onwards. It's just more or less, it just become being a better bruiser player and knowing how to play team fights correctly, which will obviously impact the game the most and also decide the outcome. Like I said already, Boots Rush with Cleaver is my preferred go-to. I know some people do like going Eclipse first as well. If you are ahead, you can most certainly do that as well and have an easier time dealing with Pantheon. W-Max I do like to do as well, but I don't think it's also bad if you want to completely Q-Max into E, because playing for that sustain early is not a bad idea. And you do often out-sustain Pantheon as well, to the point where Pantheon will eventually run out of mana, and you will just have the sustain advantage over him to look for the fights that you really want into him. Next champion, we have Poppy, which I would say is maybe a skill matchup. Some people really hate this matchup, but for me personally, I actually kind of like the Poppy matchup. I actually think it's one of my more fun matchups. So, most often what makes this matchup in Renekton's favor, in my opinion, is that if you're able to time your E's correctly, and you aren't using them at a point where Poppy's going to W, Poppy can't really, escape you. She can't really use her kit to her advantage. And taking these little things away from her does make the matchup infinitely easier. For instance, too, if she has her passive up, you don't obviously want to walk up and tank it. You want her to use it on a minion, and then once it's on cooldown, you can look for trades. Not standing near a wall, too, that is also very important, so she's not able to get her E off. That is another big indicator as well to prevent Poppy from playing her matchup. Not trading in Poppy Q as well is super important. Most often, I will try to walk in, I'll poke with Q. She'll try and throw her Q out, I will sidestep the Q2 damage, or even her Q in general. At that rate, Poppy loses damage, I'm able to, have a lot more power in the matchup. Now again, maybe for some people, there's a lot of mini games here, but I do think Poppy is one of the more easier matchups to play into when it comes to these like little mini games. So as long as you're doing these correctly, and by level 6, you can out-trade her. And if Poppy is trying to knock you away, you can stun her as well, which prevents Poppy from escaping you. And at that point, Poppy just, becomes really easy to fight in 1v1. And you're able to have Black Cleaver Rush. You're able to have your empowered E-Shred as well. All these things will help attribute into beating Poppy in the side lane. And when it comes to team fights as well, trying to avoid Poppy ult is very crucial. And trying to also protect your teammates from a initial engage, which is also very important. For itemization, Black Cleaver, obviously the best item of choice here, and if you do want to go maybe a more aggressive playstyle and you are hard winning into Poppy, I do think Eclipse is also a pretty good item as well, as you're able to block her damage completely, and you also are able to deal a lot of damage within the process. Next, we have our next challenging matchup, which is Quinn. Quinn, for a lot of people, does range between hard or even avoidable. But I'll be honest with you, I've always found Quinn quite manageable. I actually kind of rate it a more easy matchup compared to most people. I think what makes Renekton really strong in this matchup is the fact that his sustain is way too much for Quinn to really deal with. And the fact that Renekton's wave clear is also very good as well. It does make this matchup a lot more easier to deal with. Renekton also does have some pretty underrated tools in stopping Quinn as well. If Quinn wants to engage into Renekton, Renekton can spam his W and then right-click a buffer into Quinn E. So if you know Quinn's about to obviously E into you, you can obviously activate W and start spamming it. And if done successfully, Quinn will get stunned within the E animation when she lands onto you. And doing that allows you to also double dash onto her and start training into her, which ends up being pretty bad for her in the process. Quinn will never really win 1v1s if you're able to trade auto attacks back. It's just that if she's able to get that range on you, it can be very annoying. And I do find that Quinn's only source of damage really comes in much later on in the game if she's going crit. If Quinn does go like a lethality build, I don't think it's really that bad for Renekton. Renekton is very tanky naturally with just going Plied Steel Caps and just having a lot of health. So I don't think Quinn can sustain the damage onto him. And within the laning phase too, I think just going Plied Steel Caps, D-Shield, Second Wind are just kind of your tools for out-sustaining her damage earlier on. So when you do get to level 6 Power Spike, you can then obviously look for kills. You can try things like double dashing into her. And if you're able to time it correctly, you can then land behind Quinn as she is. And if you do that, just like the Jayce matchup, you're able to cut away Quinn's chance of escape, which often leads to getting kills onto her. So yeah, I would say Quinn is not really difficult. The only thing that makes the matchup difficult is just Quinn's ability to outroam you. So obviously using a high amount of pings is very necessary to protect your teammates and to alert them of her presence. So as long as you're doing that correctly, Renekton will outscale as a pick. He will be a better team fighter. He will be able to achieve more by going to item like Stridebreaker as well, which is very helpful for him. Renekton can also go full damage as well, as he's able to build Ghostblade as a way of just being able to gap close and a way of being able to burst her or anybody else down. And I would also say PTI as a rune is also my rune of choice here, as I am doing quick combos, I am playing to burst. So furthermore, that is kind of like my way of playing into Quinn. In terms of off-meta picks as well, Rek'Sai pops up here and there in pro play, and I sometimes do play against her as well. I would say this pick is not that difficult to really play against as Renekton, because Rek'Sai is essentially a discount version of Renekton. Like Rek'Sai tries to dash in, she tries to combo, play for Fury E. But most often, this playstyle doesn't really work into Renekton. Renekton's damage is way too big to really deal with for her. He can also go W max as well and just provide Rek'Sai a pretty negative experience when it comes to 1v1s. And when Rek'Sai is trying to play mid to late game teamfights, Rek'Sai does fall off a cliff. Renekton's ability to instantly stun and also just able to have that burst and frontlining power kind of prevents Rek'Sai from really doing anything in comparison. Renekton in the laning phase too does have way better sustain as well. He can obviously prevent Rek'Sai from using tunnels if he like walks onto them. His burst damage is too much. Renekton's wave clear is also way better, so he can go for cheaty recalls after pushing in waves and then quickly get back to lane before Rek'Sai can fully push out. So I would say I would value Renekton more within this matchup due to those reasons, and I do think just as a pick, Rek'Sai just being able to fall off is just kind of like massively negative towards their own composition. So I don't really have a lot to say about it. I don't play against it a lot. I kind of see it here and there, but most often I just see this pick kind of inting and doing nothing in the process. Not much to really talk about this matchup. You can play anything. You can even go like Briar Rune King if you want to. Just play for one-shots or Eclipse. Conqueror as well, I would say is my rune of choice, but don't really have much else to add on this matchup. It's pretty basic and pretty underwhelming as a pick into Renekton. Next, we do have Rengar. I would say Rengar may be challenging to people that are new, but I would say this matchup is easy. Just like Rek'Sai, this champion just wants to cheese you, just want to try and like play for some like early trades, try and get like a snowballing situation going on from level 1 to 2. The way you want to beat Rengar is just basically trying to play the wave states on your side of the map. You want to try and like pull the wave more on the right side, away from the bushes. If you're able to do that, Rengar won't be able to leap onto you, and you're able to keep the wave in a position where Rengar has to walk up. And if Rengar walks up in melee range, Renekton just gets to burst Rengar at will. And as long as you're just like playing these like burst combos, and you're obviously playing in a way to hold your burst before Rengar can W, Rengar won't really get any winning trades, and this pick really does just become useless. And his only way Rengar can impact the game is just trying to use his ultimate and trying to focus your carries. But as long as you're rushing Plied Steel Caps, or if you're even just going like straight damage and you're just trying to play to, you know, keep the wave in these positions, Rengar can't really play the game, and Renekton just becomes a really strong pick level 6 onwards. In terms of runes, Conqueror is the best rune of choice here, I would say, as you're able to stat check Rengar with ease. And I would also say going a Black Cleaver is really good in taking away Rengar's burst damage and ability to 1v1 you. Eclipse can also be a solid choice if you're also ahead, so kind of depends on however the lane's going for you. If you are having a bad laning phase, I would say Cleaver is a lot better. And by the level 6 onwards point and having Black Cleaver, Rengar should never really be able to fight you. Next, debuting as a normal top laner in the very easy matchup is Riven. So kind of a no-brainer here. So historically, I would say this matchup has always been very easy for Renekton. And even more so when you kind of play a bit more aggressively level 1 as well. Riven's only claim to fame in being able to beat Renekton is level 1. However, a counter strategy to this in this matchup is taking W. So if you're able to take PTA, bone plating, you can just essentially go W start. You can walk into your minion wave. If Riven tries to Q trade you, you just simply auto attack her down. You get 2 procs of PTA. And then on the third Q, Renekton can time his W on your like minion wave as well as you're walking backwards, which will then also force all the minions to hit her at the same time, as well as also stunning her from being able to auto attack you in the process. At that point as well, you build enough fury from fighting Riven to get your empowered W within the next fight. And if Riven tries to do that again, you simply auto W, you ignite, and you end up killing her. Obviously as well, if she does get level 2 before you don't want to obviously go for this play, but if you do try and get level 2 and you try to push out after her using her Qs on the first initial trade, Renekton will obviously just, you know, get level 2, and then he can obviously fight her easily. Renekton can just get level 2, he can take E, dash in, and obviously just try to finish Riven down. Furthermore, there's not really much else to add in this matchup, because Renekton is just a straight up auto win pick into Riven. Like, you could even just first time Renekton if you're a Riven player into a Riven, and this shouldn't really be difficult. You can go things like W max as well, which I find is a really good strategy against Riven. Riven will never really have any opportunities to fight you. And every time Riven thinks that, oh, Renekton W, I can fight now, she'll be often just misled with the fact that Renekton's W is back up after 5 seconds, maxing it out and having cooldown reduction. And she'll just have like a complete fit and rage quit most often into me. So yeah, Riven matchup, quite easy. In terms of items and runes, PTA I think is my rune of choice in this matchup. And I would also say you can just play any item, just whatever you prefer. Like, I like to go full AD a lot because I can dive Riven at will. I can, you know, split push a Storm. Riven cannot stay in side lane against me. And overall, the pick is just really bad. And Riven can't really do the things like she used to. And because laning quests are also a thing these days, Riven can't just roam and get a lead without being behind in her quest. So, obviously, yeah, this matchup's pretty doomed. And if you are a Riven player, I would simply just dodge it. Because you're going to have an awful experience similar to, you know, Illaoi into Renekton, which is, you know, obviously horrible for Renekton here. Following on next, we have Ryze. So Ryze is a pick that is sometimes played top lane into Renekton. Now, this matchup can obviously range from all types of columns, but what I have found out over the years is that Ryze does feel a lot stronger than he used to be. Ryze, even earlier on in the games these days, does have a lot more damage than he used to as well. So I think it can be quite easy to also make a mistake in this matchup and for Ryze to outscale you. But most often, you are obviously playing to, you know, try and get the wave states on your side of the map. You're trying to play with, you know, E and W trade. So every time you have Fury, you want to try and dash in. You're going to try and one-shot Ryze. And once you do have a plan of, like, you know, finding your windows to trade him and your overall kills you're able to receive, this matchup can feel easy. But just like Kayle and just like Nasus, you do have to ensure that once you do put Ryze behind, that you are obviously trying to impact the map. Because Ryze will most often try to play for CS and try to get back in the game. So, but just as like a realm of caution, obviously against Ryze, you want to be very impactful. You want to try and impact the map. So don't give Ryze any time to scale because Ryze will use that against you. And he will hit like a truck when he gets to his second item power spike. I personally feel going Eclipse first item is pretty good for me. You can get an item like Stridebreaker as well, despite the fact that it does have lower damage and it can feel a little bit awful into snowballing against Ryze. However, again, a Stridebreaker isn't bad for your mid game, so it does make up for that. And if Ryze tries a team fight as well and you do have a Stridebreaker available, Ryze won't really be able to outkite your teammates or yourself, so I would say it is a pretty good item within the game. Later on, getting a Kayn is also very good, so I do recommend that as well if you are looking to take away Ryze's damage. And I would say in terms of runes, PTA is my rune of choice for this matchup. The next AP champion that we do have, which can be interpreted as a Renekton counter pick, is Rumble. So Rumble for me is, I would say, a hard matchup. Now, Rumble can be challenging. You can snowball against Rumble, and I do often kind of beat Rumble. But to be quite honest with you, I think when you do meet a very good Rumble player, this matchup can feel very hard, and your options to kind of beat him are very limited. Most often, you can do it by level 6. So if you do get level 6 and you do buy like a Hex Drinker, and you do buy like maybe even Merc Treads if you're able to get that, you can sustain against his damage to the point where you can win a fight against him. However, most often you're looking to fight him when his heat is back on 0. And if he does also waste his ultimate too within the laning phase, you can obviously look for a fight when it is down. The only reason I find this matchup a bit hard is that when I do find my teammates to be very weak-sided or they are just losing by default, Rumble can feel like a pain in the ass because Rumble will always be relevant with his R key. And if I am unable to get the opportunities to 1v1 him with the enemy team playing for his side of the map. Rumble can consistently bully me in the laning phase, and I'm unable to do anything back in return. So this matchup kind of varies between my teammates, really. Like, it just depends on if they're doing good or not. If they're doing good, I'm able to get the fights that I want, but if I am kind of being weak-sided or my teammates are losing, I do find Rumble to be quite difficult. All I can really do in this laning phase is go second win D-Shield if I want to try and play to survive. If Rumble does take Q level 1, however, I can go for an early kill potentially, with his Q being a 10-second cooldown. So if Rumble Qs on the first wave and I walk out the way and I have PTA, I can look to take E and then fight him back with PTA, proc my PTA, disengage, and by level 2 I can look for an all-in with my W being available, which allows me to get a kill successfully. However, if Rumble does take E-Star, I'm unable to really get that fight that I'm looking for, and instead I should probably default for taking Q-Star and to play a second or third wave crash. Now, as I'm talking about this, I am kind of debating whether I should move it in challenging or hard, because I am thinking all the times that I am beating him in laning phase, which is quite often. It's just only the times I'm weak-sided where I'm kind of not doing that. But to be honest with you, if any of these matchups are getting strong-sided, I am kind of having the same issue as Rumble here. So honestly, I might just downgrade it to challenging, because I think you can beat Rumble just by level 6 and also playing off his heat correctly. The only thing that I do find annoying too is that just the fact that you have to invest in gold to kind of play against him. And it's not like getting Boots Rush or anything like that with my other matchups I have up here. But it's more or less like buying a Hex Drinker and delaying my Stride Breaker or my Black Cleaver Power Spike can feel quite negative to me. So furthermore, I think I will just leave it in challenging for the sake of my own experiences being not as bad. But I think for a lot of people, this might vary between hard and challenging. But I will leave it here just for my reasons that I gave. Now, in terms of runes, PTA or Conqueror, both can be good, and I think both can be used pretty well. It just really depends on your preference. In terms of items, I know some people like going Eclipse. I have done Eclipse myself when I'm snowballing into Rumble, which feels very good for me. However, I think Cleaver just feels really good for utility. It feels really good for my teammates as well, when I'm able to play team fights and be a lot more tankier. So Cleaver into Stride Breaker or even Sterix can be pretty decent as items of choice. However, if I'm having a really bad laning phase and I need to go Hex Drinker, it kind of takes away my ability to go Sterix. So at that point, I'll probably just go Hex Drinker into Cleaver and kind of just hope that, my team fights go a lot better and Rumble doesn't really get anything from killing my teammates or getting a fight that he wants. Next, in terms of top laner matchups, we have Set. So Set for me is quite an easy matchup. Set is very easy just due to the fact that Renekton can abuse WMAX. So because you can abuse WMAX, you can fight him pretty consistently toe-to-toe. So once you do max W, you can fight him in side lane. You can go items like Briar, Rune King and Eclipse. And you can really just dominate him at all stages of the game. Even level 1, Set players will try to fight you with E-Star and Conqueror. But if Renekton takes Conqueror and Q-Star with Bone Plating, he can fight in his minion wave and most often kill Set from an auto or two before he's able to die. So I would say Renekton is quite favored. Renekton does feel a lot stronger. And Renekton's build paths also give him a lot more value in being able to play the game in comparison to Set. So furthermore, I don't really have much to add about this matchup. It's more or less just trying to, build up your Fury to W, bursting him down, then disengaging. Renekton can also use his empowered W to break his shield as well, which I find to be, really strong, and you're able to, cheese your way of, hard countering him. But yeah, it's just more so being reactive, just being, playing in your wave. Like if your wave's built up and you're trying to look for fights, that is your best opportunity. If you're fighting Set when there's a giant wave on his side, obviously, he can get the upper hand and it can obviously lead in his favor. But more than not, I think Set is pretty straightforward. I don't really ever struggle with this matchup. And I think for a lot of Renekton players too, as long as you're not using your empowered abilities incorrectly, and if you're also opting to go WMAX as well after 3 points Q, this matchup does become incredibly easy, even post level 6 as well. I find Set to be quite straightforward. In terms of items, Blighted Rune King can be a solid choice as well into his health stacking build. So if you do want to obviously have Health Shred and you do want to dominate the matchup within the side lane, Blighted Rune King is by all means a great choice. Going Eclipse or Cleaver, both are also very great. It's just a matter of preference. For me personally, I think Eclipse is my item of choice in this matchup. And I would also say Conqueror as my rune is also my rune of choice. The next champion I want to talk about, which I did forget initially, was Sejuani. So Sejuani to me is kind of like a scuffed Gragas. So I will probably just put it in the easy category. Now Gragas can also be a 50-50 matchup. So I'm debating, do I move it? But I think I'll leave it here. At the end of the video, I might go through moving certain champions depending on how I feel. But I think Gragas is pretty comfortable there in the current state of meta of things, and I think Sejuani will also fall here. Sejuani before used to be a pretty good pick into Renekton because her tanky stats, the fact that passive would come up would also be like a more Gragas Garen style matchup where, you know, you have to proc a passive consistently, otherwise she'll get really good trades into you. However, being able to go Mercury Treads or just being able to also go like Black Cleaver Rush and playing to use your empowered Q and your empowered W correctly does make this matchup very easy, and I feel like nowadays with all the nerfs towards Sejuani, this champion is practically trash in my opinion. In terms of runes, Conqueror I think is the best rune of choice here, as you're able to have a lot more stat checking prowess into playing against Sejuani. And also I do think just going Black Cleaver or Eclipse is also the best items to start with, and then you can just kind of build your typical bruiser items right after that. The next tank matchup that we do have to talk about too is the Shen matchup. So Shen is, I would say, a skill matchup, maybe challenging. Again, a lot of these like matchups that are tanks are usually like challenging or skill matchups because Renekton can win these matchups, but there is a lot of things outside of his realm that Renekton can't really control. Like if his team is losing, Shen will feel pretty difficult to play against because Shen automatically adds a lot of value into the game with protecting his carries. So with that being said, I think maybe Shen will stay in challenging for that reason. So while you are beating Shen and you are able to have a good matchup into him post level 6 or even level 3, I probably still will leave Shen here because Shen's overall capabilities to keep his teammates alive with his W, his taunt, and his ultimate can be quite a problematic thing to deal with. Now, when it does come to laning phase, as long as you're able to avoid his Q hits, like not trying to stay in his lane and you're, you know, playing accordingly with your positioning, Shen can feel quite, you know, decent to play into. His damage can hurt like a truck though, however, but if you're holding off your W from using it on his own W and you're playing into breaking his shield consistently or playing when he doesn't have a shield, this matchup won't feel so difficult, and by the time you do get your first back and you do get your ultimate as well, if Shen does try to dash into you when the wave is on your side of the map, Renekton can just pop ult and instantly fight. Shen can't really ever survive against Renekton at that point, and just like my recent commentaries as well, I do show that as well, even when I was behind. Furthermore, I think post level 6 is when Renekton does gain complete side lane dominance into Shen. However, you do want to try and like hold off your abilities. You do want to try and be more cognizant to how you use them. Shen will try to dash onto you, and you can use your W to obviously counter that as well. So if you are going for tower dives when he's low, you can just activate W, and if he does E as well, you can obviously go into one-shotting him right after. So yeah, that's really all there is to say about the matchup. And when it comes to playing around his ultimate as well, typically we want to shove in waves into his turret, and when Shen does try to ult as well, if we are just shoving in waves, we can take plates a lot easier. We can also take the tower a lot easier as well, and one bad teleport from Shen can also cost him an entire landing phase. So as long as you're shoving in waves and you are trying to, you know, keep him under his tower, or you obviously are playing in a way where he has to make a risky decision in being able to ult, that is where you're going to get your best opportunities, and that's where Shen is obviously going to struggle in being able to get a good R off. The next champion now to talk about, which people used to say is very easy, including myself. However, nowadays, I think this matchup is completely annoying. So I'm going to put Singed in the challenging category. So Singed is really annoying because Renekton wants to snowball against his opponents. He wants to dominate his lane opponent. He wants to get plates. He wants to get good tempo resets and take tower fast. And these are what's going to allow Renekton to snowball games a lot easier. Now, with Singed is very annoying because all he's going to be doing is trying to proxy against you. And trying to stop Singed proxy is completely annoying because you take damage in the process. He can flip you away. He can ult and ghost away as well. And he just becomes quite a big nuisance. So Singed can be super annoying. And now if you're unable to make him proxy, you can obviously get good trades that you want and you will be able to out damage him. But most often Singed will just obviously be more inclined to leave laning phase and just try and go behind turrets. So it does kind of require you and your teammate to try and stop him from getting those advantages, because if he's unable to be stopped, he will just obviously roam to mid. He will be able to roam to objectives as well, and he will try and use that additional gold lead that he's able to get to out tempo and dominate you in the process. So a lot of being able to counter him is just by proxying yourself, or it's by using your teammate to stop him. Or if you're able to get to the laning phase around the same time as him, try and keeping the wave in the middle of the lane is also very important, as you're able to keep him in the lane and you're able to get the fights that you're looking for. In terms of items, I do like to change it up here a little bit. I do like to go around as Hydra, as it gives me sustain. It gives me a lot of burst damage to fight a Singed as well. Following on from that, Cleaver Sterix is practically normal. I do like to pick up those as well. But more than often, yeah, I just like going to Ravenous really, just so I can proxy, just so I can like kind of heal up against his damage. And that's kind of like my item of choice here. And I do also like taking Conqueror to deal with Singed as well. Okay guys, the next champion I will put on the list now is Sion, and I think he will be I don't know where to put Sion actually. So Sion can feel like an easy matchup at times, and compared to most other tanks, I think Sion you can get away a lot more with, because Sion's whole plan is actually to die a lot in order to create tempo advantages. But Renekton takes that away pretty well because his wave clear is already pretty good. Now that's not to say that Renekton hard counters the playstyle, because Sion can still be very annoying. But Renekton can, you know, easily deal with Sion trying to proxy. Sion is a little bit more slower and requires more of a charge up on his Q. Renekton can cancel that with W. Renekton also has a lot of damage up front as well, preventing Sion from, you know, getting the full wave in time. However, a lot of it too is also just like playing wave states in the middle or just slightly away from your tower. If you're too close to your tower and you're trying to freeze, Sion will just go around and try to proxy at that point. So if you can burst Sion down before he's able to do that, and then you are able to create those opportunities, you can then obviously kill the wave, go to Sion with the health that you've chunked out, and then you can obviously get an easy kill onto him as well. Another thing you can do as well is you can use your E-dashes to, you know, block Sion from trying to ult past you. You can also communicate with your jungler to also try and stop him, which does become a lot more easier compared to Singed, who's a lot more mobile with his moon speed. So furthermore, I think Sion is definitely more of an easy matchup. And compared to most other champions too, Sion's damage doesn't really overwhelm you. Unless it's like much later on in the game where he does have his items and you don't have a Blade of Ruin King, for example. I think that's the only point where Sion will feel quite strong. But earlier on, I think Sion's pretty straightforward. You can kill him between level 2, 3. You can kill him a couple times before level 6. It really just depends like how Sion's playing. And even if it's like a Bows, right? Bows will still be like, you know, pulling a lot of deaths into a Renekton matchup. So I think it is one of Sion's like kryptonites. It just more or less comes down to like how your teammates play later on. And Sion will always be a threat within the game just because of his W scaling, being able to give him a lot of health from killing minions. So as long as you can deny him of being able to proxy, you're able to kill him at good points to make sure that he gets some bad deaths. This matchup will feel a lot more easier. And then when it does come down to like runes and like itemization, I think PTI is a pretty good rune because Sion is very squishy early, and you do also play with the Ignite and your ultimate damage to help shred his health a lot easier. Blade Rune King can be a solid choice as well. I do find it actually a pretty good item into Sion in comparison to a Mundo or other similar health style tank. Mainly due to the reason that Sion doesn't have that damage to compete with you. And when you do get Blade Rune King, you have your empowered W, your empowered E. You do quite often just kill him on demand. And after that point, you can go Cleaver, you can go Eclipse if you want to, and just kind of like adapt to the game afterwards, like whatever items that you want to buy. So in my opinion, I do think Bork's a better item. Eclipse can also feel pretty good as well with the max health shred. Blade Rune King also feels pretty consistent, and it's just a matter of like whatever you prefer really. But for me, these are like what I think, and I think Blade Rune King is my item of choice in this matchup. In terms of like other champions that I do see sometimes as well, I do see Smolder sometimes pick top lane. Now this champion is very easy in my opinion. Maybe easy, let's say, because there is a scaling element that we do need to play around. But essentially, like other scaling matchups, Smolder is very weak early, and we can take E-Start in being able to trade against him in level 1 with PTA. And then when it comes to level 2 to level 3, we can take our W and we can burst him down and kill him reliably. And any point afterwards where we keep the wave on our side of the map and Smolder is trying to walk into us, we can look for double dash trades, we can W him, cancelling his own W, stopping him from flying away from us. And after that point, we can just run him down and kill him pretty easily. So I would say Smolder's pretty easy. He won't really get the stacks that he needs. He will take a lot longer to get them. And if you do go like full damage as well, and you also are playing to like impact the map a lot, you can easily either one-shot Smolder, even if he's like playing inside lane, or you can obviously just roam the map and just dominate the game while he's trying to scale back into the game. And the fact that the enemy has like a lack of front line as well does make him being picked top lane as quite a troll pick as well into Renekton. So furthermore, this matchup's pretty easy. As long as you take PTA and as long as you're like either just rushing damage items or, you know, playing however you want to play into Smolder, this matchup really isn't that bad. As long as you're keeping wave states on your side of the map, he has to step up, which allows you to constantly get dash trades that you want, and you will be able to kill Smolder if you do have tier 2 boots rushed, as well as your ultimate being available to easily kill him on demand. Another champion that I do see sometimes as well is Swain. I think Swain is more of an easier matchup. Swain's problem with top lane is that his mana issues are just too much for him to really deal with. And whenever Swain wants to fight, he does use a lot of mana in doing so. And Renekton's like annoying training pattern of being very quick to be in and out does cause Swain a lot of problems. Swain also has to rely on hitting his E to get a pretty good combo off in his favor. But as long as you have pretty good movement and you're able to dodge it, Swain can't really do anything. And when you do get level 6 as well, your ultimate with healing reduction as well is just a lot stronger. So Swain doesn't really stand a chance in going toe-to-toe against Renekton. And then when it does come to, like, obviously items and runes, PTA, I think, is my rune of choice, as I'm able to play off fast trades and be able to burst them down. And I also do like going either Blighted Ruin King, just so that helps shred, or I do also just like going a Black Cleaver or Stridebreaker, just to allow me to stick onto him and give him less opportunities to escape from me. But yeah, this champion practically sucks, and if he's played into you, it shouldn't really be a big deal. Next, we have Tahm Kench. So Tahm Kench, I think, is actually an easy matchup as well. So I've played against quite a few Tahm Kenches in my time. Like, I played against Watley, I've played against like another one called Gokkex, who's a really good Tahm Kench player as well. And every time I play against these like really great like Challenger GM Tahm Kench players, it was never really a problem. And the main reason why this matchup's not so hard is because Renekton's wave clear is just so much better than Tahm Kench's. Tahm Kench may be tanky, he may have damage to like try and out trade you in certain points, but the thing that Tahm Kench cannot do is contest your wave push. So every time you want to shove in and you want to get an item, you can basically do that on demand. So every time you push a cannon wave, you can reset. Tahm Kench is forced to stay in the lane, and then you can just obviously recall, get your item advantage, come back, and then you have the stats to actually fight him. Another thing as well is that being able to abuse minions and staying behind them also takes away Tahm Kench's value in his Q. Tahm Kench will heal and he will deal a bunch of damage hitting his Q. But if you're constantly like dodging it, you're avoiding it with minions as well, Tahm Kench won't really ever get the damage to really go toe-to-toe against you, even if he is walking up against you as well. Most often as well, if Tahm Kench is trying to walk in my face, he will have to try and get through my minion wave in order to do that. So I can just sit in my minion wave, I can just walk around, I can auto W, I can Q, and then I can like double dash away as well to prevent him from hitting Q on me. But overall, I think this matchup's pretty straightforward. Post level 6 as well, Renekton's ult damage is way too strong for him to deal with. Renekton W as well can consistently cancel Tahm Kench's E. And if you are maxing it as well, you can cancel all the shields that he's able to get. With me, I do like going W max. I think it's a very great matchup to do so as well. You can also opt in to go in either 5-point Q into W max as well. That is also an option. Or even just like 4-point Q into W max. So you have kind of like a lot of leeway to really play into this matchup. And overall, when it comes to mid to late game, Renekton as a bruiser frontline pick is just way better than Tahm Kench. So Tahm Kench, pretty underwhelming, and I do say he's pretty easy. In terms of items, Blighted Ruin King can feel pretty good, but I feel like Tahm Kench's ability to outdamage you definitely does exist, with items like Dusk and Dawn and even Heartsteel. So as long as I'm going Black Cleaver and I'm playing off cooldowns, like waiting for my W up, I can obviously get just enough burst to put him behind and also win trades against him, without compromising my tanky ability for mid to late game. So furthermore, I think going Cleaver is really good. Eclipse can be good as well to mitigate against his damage. And going a rune like Conqueror as well also does feel pretty good for me in this matchup, as I'm able to trade consistently against him in the early portion of the game, as well as also having a lot more upfront damage with my abilities as well. So that being said, that's all there really is when it comes to Tahm Kench. Okay, next we have Teemo. So Teemo, I'm going to rate in the easy column. So for a lot of people, and especially newer Renekton players, they do have quite a big mental block into Teemo, because the main thing that makes Teemo very annoying is that his blind can completely cancel your W. For instance, if you're about to W Teemo and he blinds you, your W will miss on top of him, and then Teemo can just auto attack on top of you, and you're unable to return damage within that situation. Now, the key to beating Teemo is really easy, actually. So level 1, Teemo is very squishy, and you can opt into taking PTA and E-Start to get a really good trade-off. Once you get that trade-off, you can obviously disengage into the bushes, and then by level 2, you can take W, and if you do have an item like D-Shield and Second Wind, you can sustain against his poison damage through the lane as well. But furthermore, once you get level 2, you can dash into him. Teemo will try to blind you, and after that point, you hold your W, you hold what you're doing, and then once it wears off, you simply empower W, you ignite, auto E, and Teemo will just die due to the fact that your damage is just way too high. Now, this strategy works very consistent for me. So if you're able to do that as well, I think you will be gaining a lot more success into the matchup. And every time that you are holding your W, this does prove to be a really great strategy, and Teemo, just being the squishy character that he is, will never be able to out-trade you within 1v1s. Another thing that does counter Teemo as well is that going Mercury Treads is also a really great option, because the additional moon speed, the magic resist, and the tenacity are all great components in being able to counter Teemo's playstyle, in the fact you can get out of his blind a lot easier, his slows, and the fact that his magic damage is also cut by a percentage. So furthermore as well, I think Mercury Treads are a great option, and right after that you can go into Eclipse, you can go into Ghostblade, you can go into Cleaver, Stridebreaker, practically anything really, and as long as you're taking PTA for those bursty trades as well, I think Teemo is kind of a walk in the park, and the only thing that makes Teemo more of a difficult matchup is his Shroom game. Obviously with Shrooms you can just buy a red trinket and you can just kill them, and being able to understand where they're placed is very important too, because Teemo will try and set them up in a way where he's able to kite you, so as long as you're not stepping into that territory and overcommitting to chasing him, you should have no problem. As long as you're playing off doing all your burst damage you're able to deal and disengaging before he's able to trade you back and kite you, that is perfectly fine. If you're forcing Teemo to back, that is also a win. But if you're forcing Teemo to stay with a slow health, Teemo's unable to do anything, so you can gain a gold lead, an XP lead, and Teemo will be in the situation where if he does step up against you, you can simply just stat check him by jumping back onto him, holding W, and also using your ultimate to deal damage to him while you're unable to attack him. So overall, that justifies why Teemo's in the easy category, and why I find the matchup very easy. Moving on, we have Trundle himself. So this champion, I actually rate easy. I was going to put very easy because in my experience, Trundle just doesn't do anything against Renekton. But the only reason I will place Trundle in easy is the fact that if we do make the wrong macro decisions, Trundle can just take all our turrets. So it does obviously come down to understanding how to play mid to late game against him, which more than often, if we are fed against Trundle, we want to have someone else in the side lane to wave clear if we're going to use our lead. So for instance, let's say our mid laner is a scaling champion like Arise, and I'm 5 kills into my top lane matchup, but I want to impact the map. I will tell my mid laner, hey mid, can you go top and just wave clear? He will be more than happy to do that, and then I can be mid, I can use my advantage that I gained in this matchup, and I can completely snowball and dominate the map. Trundle will never come close when it comes to team fights. My power to snowball and just dominate team fights is way better than his. Trundle has to stay in side lane and just try and fight and try and take towers, but if you're not engaging with him as a mage player, Trundle won't be able to really do anything. He's actually a really linear champion. And I do have a lot of respect for Trundle players because playing Trundle is not fucking easy at all. It's actually a very hard champion because this champion has so many issues with his Season 1 kit. It's really hard to make work. So the only way Trundle will be able to really gain an advantage is by trying to really be the better overall fundamental player. Like if he's good with his fundamentals, he's good with his training timers, he's good with like his overall understanding of where and how to abuse people on the map, that is where his overall success is going to come into play. However, how do we play against Trundle, you may ask? So with Trundle, a lot of the matchup is simply you want to take Q-Star. If Trundle is trying to fight you, obviously you don't want to go too in-depth with it. You can take W-Star as well, but for me, I think Q-Star is pretty fine. Trundle's level 1 is obviously way stronger than Renekton's. So obviously at that point, we can just give up our ability to try and fight him level 1, and we can just play for level 2. So we'll try and auto Q, we'll walk away from Trundle. Once Trundle gets level 2, we'll obviously just be behind the minion wave, waiting until we can interact with it. Once we get level 2, we can take W, and if Trundle walks into us, we can simply auto-empower W. Now, building that Fury is important. We don't want to be hitting minions. We don't want to be trying to poke him with Q to get that 10 Fury. But once Trundle does walk into our radius, we simply hit him with the Empower W and we shred his entire health. And by level 3 onwards, the matchup becomes even easier. As long as we let Trundle walk into us and we don't use our E's in a bad way, Trundle is always at a disadvantage. It's kind of similar to Olaf in a way, this matchup. So, with Trundle, if I dash into him and then I try to use my abilities, if I try to disengage right after, Trundle will simply pillar in front of me and cancel my E. That is the only way Trundle will be able to kill you. Because at that point, he'll activate W and just run you down. And if he has ultimate, he has lethal tempo, wherever he may be, he's going to be doing a lot of damage and he's going to leave you in a very compromised position. However, if we simply walk up to him and we use our auto Q, auto empower W, and then if we want to disengage, we E1, Trundle will try to pillar and obviously cancel that. But this is where we use E2 right after. So if we E2 right after the pillar frame, we can kind of animation cancel it a little bit, where while he does knock us up, we can cancel that knock up with our E2. So we can get behind the pillar and Trundle can't really cut us off. And that's why I think Trundle is a very easy matchup. Like, I would actually rate him very easy personally, because I personally don't see how Trundle even wins this matchup. Because if I do go W max, if I am going damage like Eclipse or Blair Rune King, I just really don't see how he's ever going to win a 1v1 against me. The only thing, like I said, that gives him advantage is playing the split push game. So obviously, if you just tell your teammates to go there, or you're obviously playing great with your timings, you're able to contest his push and obviously wave clear. That is obviously your best bet to really dealing with him. And obviously when you are fed enough into him, you can just kill him at will. Trundle's stats are very weak, and if he is going things like Trinity Force or Ravenous Hydra, he just won't have the stats to really be able to deal with you. So furthermore, I think Trundle's pretty easy, and on the screen right now, here's the items and runes. I think PTA is my rune of choice here, but you can go Conqueror. And I do also think, you know, you can just go Eclipse as well to get really good trades off and take away Trundle's damage overall. Moving on, we now have Tryndamere. So, same situation really. Tryndamere, Trundle, Olaf, they're all like the same type of matchup really. And in my opinion, I rate Tryndamere in the easy matchup. The thing with Tryndamere is that he will try to proxy, and he will try and be a little bit more orthodox, in where he is also trying to like ignore laning phase against you. But if he's trying to fight you post level 3, you are just stronger by doing the same strategy against Trundle. So if you're playing that way and you're playing off your empowered abilities, Tryndamere can't really do anything. Tryndamere will only try to proxy mainly when he gets Tiamat, but if you're able to burst him down, then you're able to just zone him away from getting behind that tower by trying to walk in front of him if he's heading that direction. Tryndamere won't be able to proxy it, and then he'll be forced to back, and every time he's doing that, he's missing gold, he's missing XP, and eventually you can just go for a one-shot on him. A big thing too why Renekton is really good to Tryndamere as well is that W max allows him to get multiple Ws off, be able to peel against Tryndamere's ultimate a lot longer as well. Through that 5-second time of that ultimate being active, Renekton will get a W back within that time if he has got CDR and his W max. So even later on in the game, even if Tryndamere has crit items and Renekton has like a full build, Renekton will always be winning. Renekton can just go full damage too. He could one-shot Tryndamere into his passive, and then he can use his items like Strider Break or even Ghost Blade to disengage from Tryndamere. And then once his W is back up, he can walk into Tryndamere, he can stun him down. And then once the ultimate wears off, Renekton can finish him off and easily kill him. So just like Trundle, as long as we can also have somebody that can stay in the side lane to kind of wave clear against him, or if we're able to obviously burn his ult and we're able to just keep split pushing against him, Tryndamere can't really do anything against it, and the matchup just become very easy. In terms of team fighting and mid game, Renekton is just a way better pick. What I will say too, because I didn't really add on to that, is level 1 as well, Tryndamere will be trying to fight you just like Trundle, so we want to obviously play passive as well. We can take W start to fend off against Tryndamere's cheese with Howler Blades. And then obviously by the point of getting level 2 and 3, if we played safe enough, Tryndamere will become pretty easy to deal with, and just like that, it will go into the whole playstyle like I just described. Another thing as well, just real quickly, just so I'm not really missing any details out, when Tryndamere does ult, we have the option of also just disengaging with our double dashes, like in the laning phase. So if you are in a situation where maybe he can kill you, try to just double dash away and run towards your turret. Try and run around your turret as well, and also prevent Tryndamere from getting the hits against you, as this will create a pretty problematic scenario for him when he's trying to like kill you under your own turret, and he will end up dying to the turret, or you'll be able to trade 1-for-1 in those type of situations. Okay, so moving on, we don't have a lot of champions left. I can't believe I've gone like, I don't know how many hours it's been. It's been like a couple hours, maybe even 3 hours, because I've been taking some little breaks as I'm recording this. But yeah, I hope you guys really enjoyed the video. Make sure to like again and subscribe if you're enjoying the content. And let me know what videos you guys also want to see, because I want to make anything that you guys want to see. Okay, back to the video. So Cho'Gath is a matchup that I really do enjoy. And if you don't know, I have a 2-hour guide. It's actually my only guide I've done like a whole breakdown for. And I am planning to do more in the future. It's just that it does take a lot of time, and I probably will try and like condense it a lot more next time. But in terms of like really good breakdowns and just overall good matchup guides, that is by far one of the best ones on YouTube in my opinion. So definitely recommend that too if you want to know more. Cho'Gath is basically a skill matchup because you are trying to obviously dodge his passive procs. You are trying to avoid being hit by his E by your own good movement or your own E's. Most typically too, you can obviously E in and then obviously E back out and bait his E. And then once he misses that, you can be a little bit more aggressive with your Q and W right after, or even your ultimate, and try to all in him. As long as Urgot can't get the damage against you using his passive or his E, Urgot does become very easy. So these are like the main aspects you really need to look out for. And if you're able to make him constantly miss with E, you can obviously hard punish that and always go for your all-ins. Furthermore as well, this matchup, I don't think there's really much else to talk about because it's actually just as simple as that. That is all Urgot can really do. And the only other thing I guess as well is just try not to get low enough to where you get hit by ult. If you are low, obviously look to flash or E his ultimate, as that is the game changing decider in being able to kill you or even like anyone else on a team. And if you just get that in a team fight as well, where you just land his ult, it can be very problematic with the fear. So obviously try to block the ult for your teammates as well, and try to always just try and peel him off as well from killing your carries. In terms of runes, PCI and Conqueror are both great choices. I think for me, I kind of like Conqueror a bit more because when I do get that level 6 fight and I'm like just fighting against him, having those Conqueror stats is very helpful, and I do kind of aid it into being the better choice as well in those like 1v1s, especially once he gets Cleaver and some other items as well. In terms of builds and itemization, I have these on the screen right now. Eclipse is a great option if you are ahead, as you're able to block his damage more consistently and have a lot more snowballing power into him. Black Cleaver is also a really great choice because the additional health that you're able to gain, as well as the additional stats, do provide you with even more stat checking power into dealing with Urgot. And the fact that you are getting Armor Shred as well is really handy into his overall playstyle, where he will build armor between his third to last item with Death Stance and other little items like that. Going Plate Steel Caps in the laning phase is also very helpful to take away his passive damage and also just his overall damage is able to deal with you throughout the game. Shredbreaker Poachers can also be very good after Cleaver, and you can also go as a first item, but for me, I think you kind of need more stats on demand, so getting Eclipse or Cleaver is way more of a better choice, in my honest opinion. So with that said, that's really it with the Urgot matchup. And now, we have another very easy matchup, being Varus. So, Varus is another matchup where I'm completely lying to you, because this matchup is an avoidable matchup. And if you know me, if you know any Renekton one-trick pony, we fucking hate Varus. Varus ruins my day. In fact, Varus is the only matchup that I've only ever banned for top lane. In most of my years, this matchup is by far the worst matchup I've ever played against. Like, I know Illaoi is like annoying, and I did express how annoying that is to play against it. The difference between Varus and Illaoi is literally night and day. Like, Illaoi, I can cope with having a bad laning phase and maybe waiting for that mid game for things to change around. But Varus already wins laning phase. He already outscales me. He already one-shots me. And this is like every point in the game. And you might just say, oh, but you know, he's an ADC champion. You just get level 3 and win, right? Well, that's the thing, right? You don't really ever win short trades against Varus. And you don't really win long trades either, because the way this champion works is that once he kills a minion, he gets a burst of attack speed, following on from the fact that he has PTA or lethal tempo, so he can obviously hard abuse his auto attacks onto you. And once he has his W procced onto you 3 times, he can use his E to proc the blight stacks, obviously. And right after that, he can also use his Q, which does a devastating amount of damage. And if that wasn't enough too, he can also use WQ, which also does even more max health damage. And by the way, if he goes full AP Varus, he can literally one-shot you with this ability. Like, the ratio on the AP WQ is completely insane. It's like so low skill and low effort, it's absolutely crazy. All he has to do is land ult, and then it guarantees his WQ to one-shot you. But even if he's not going AP as well, he can also just go like this attack speed tank build, where he goes items like Hullbreaker, Terminus. Hell, he can even build a Randuin's or Jackshaw or whatever he really wants to. Like, this champion can really do it all. He can go Lethality. Now, I will say Lethality is not even like his strongest build. Riot often nerfs Lethality builds, but I think they really do miss the point, because when it comes to top lane, Lethality is completely useless. And if he's going on hits like tank style items, this champion is just completely unbearable to deal with. So, with that being said, yeah, Renekton doesn't really do anything. Like, you can try as much as you want to make me think that this matchup isn't a hard thing. Like, people tell me, oh, just go full damage and one-shot Varus. Okay, buddy, but he has exhaust. And if he has exhaust, your whole damage build is completely nullified. Now, you might also ask, why don't you take exhaust into Varus? Well, I actually do take exhaust as well, but believe it or not, even that's not enough to survive against Varus. So, this champion is definitely a matchup you should permaban or you should avoid, because you really will not be doing anything unless your teammates are winning, and you can obviously tank frontlining against them. Now, I think even on some stat websites and stuff, I think Varus always had the biggest gold difference into Renekton, and that's saying a lot, by the way, because Renekton doesn't have many matchups that really get higher gold than him, even in counter matchups. Renekton kind of goes even. So Varus is quite the outlier, and this champion is absolutely scary if you play against it. So highly recommend you avoid this matchup, and you can kill him level 3 and 5 if you do get even level 6 before him. That is possible. And if he does obviously miss ult, and he obviously has his WQ on cooldown, that is a viable chance in being able to beat him. But I will just warn you, I hate this matchup, you will hate this matchup, and you'll honestly feel like torturing yourself in your own ways. And I don't want to know what ways those are, but yeah, I think for me alone, being tortured is just playing against Varus. So I just pray for you all, that's all. And I'm not even religious. Make that what you will, Varus in the avoid category. Now, another champion that people would have in the avoid category is Vayne. But what I actually will say about Vayne is that this matchup is just a hard matchup. Vayne, I actually don't really lose against as much because I think with Vayne, you can easily tank her damage earlier on with D-Shield and Second Wind. But overall, you're kind of playing to get boots rushed, and then you are playing to get level 6 as well. And once you do get that, 1v1ing her isn't that bad because you will have Ignite, you will be able to burst her down, and I think after your second combo of trying to engage onto her, you can obviously go for the all-in. Sometimes as well, when you do try to go for that first trade against Vayne, she will just activate Ghost or like just her ultimate, and all you have to do is just kind of disengage right after. Now, you might lose some health in the process, but you can quickly just recall and run back to lane. And for me, that's a big victory because right after, if you have your ultimate up and she doesn't, you just completely stat check her and just beat her within the fight. Now, you might say, oh, but you can't just jump on Vayne. She has E. Well, just like Quinn and just like Jayce, the trick is against Vayne is that if we can get her to come close to auto-attack us, we can E into her, and then with our E2, we land behind her. And if she condemns, she pushes us even more towards her side of the map, and that gives us the room then to fight Vayne and cut her off from escaping. So obviously if she has no ghost, she has no ult, we can do that as well, but even if she does have those, if we're able to get on top of her, we can burst her down and actually deal a lot of damage. Unless she has exhaust, of course, so we'll obviously have to be a bit more strategic with that. But yeah, for me personally, I don't think Vayne's that difficult. It's just more or less knowing how to play these type of matchups in a way. I do have a video on it as well on my channel, just saying. But yeah, you can use Alcove as well to sack XP. That is something you can do. You just have to quickly run into the bush, then E in the first bush into the corner, and you get into the alcove safely, which allows you to get quest points. It allows you to get XP as well, and that way you can get your level 2 without being zoned off, and that can also give you a bit of leeway into getting minions and also being able to trade against Vayne. Now, obviously what makes Vayne hard though is the fact that if you are weak-sided and like there's constantly jungle pressure and you don't get ganks, this matchup can feel pretty awful, but I know myself, you don't need to have ganks to win. I've solo killed her quite a lot of times by myself because my junglers don't like to gank me for whatever reason. But the only thing that does like kind of bridge Vayne into being a harder matchup is just the fact that Vayne does scale like a beast, and she does obviously punish you for building health by her W scaling, which is really annoying and sad because you'd think, oh, you just build tanky and survive, but nope, Vayne does more damage. But yeah, Vayne does outscale, obviously. Vayne can be quite a threat, but the enemy picking a Vayne top lane does compromise the fact that they are losing a frontliner. So if you are able to communicate with your team to actually get a gank off top lane and you're able to put Vayne behind, you will find yourself being a lot stronger for team fights. And when it comes to securing objectives and just being able to play a good team composition, Renekton will feel a lot better, and it won't feel as doomed as it may seem when playing against a Vayne. And while you might say the same about Varus, I think Varus is just like, he's just a lot more brutal. Like, you just don't win any points. Like, Vayne, you can get good trades. You can do EQs, you can EQW, you can do these trades, even Quinn, right? You can do these trades, and that's what actually gives you a winning scenario with it. But Varus, it's just like you lose every point. He has bone playing, exhaust, his damage just like comes up too quickly, no matter what combo you do. Hence why I think Vayne is not even close to an avoid tier. In fact, I would probably, if there was like more tiers here, like for something like that, Vayne would be here and Varus would be like here. And there might not be anything in this part, but that's just like the level of difficulty that Varus is in comparison, if that makes sense of you. When it comes to Vayne as well, in terms of runes and items, I think PTA is the best rune, obviously for short trades and trying to burst it down. Now, interestingly enough, something we can do into Vayne is rush Edge of Night. Some people do say that Edge of Night can feel good, and even for myself, it has felt good before, but I feel like there's a lot of room for it to go wrong as well when it comes to mid to late game. So for me personally, I don't really like Edge of Night as like an item rush, but it does ensure you that you can 1v1 Vayne, and you can always get the burst damage and stats you need to kill her. For me as well though, I do like going Ghostblade Rush if I'm ahead. I also do like going Stridebreaker as well if I'm planning to play more of a bruiser. So if you do want to just chill and you are playing like maybe more competitive and you are playing just for the fact of you want to outscale Vayne, or like at least in the fact of being a better team fighter and frontliner, then going Stridebreaker into Aatrox can be really great in that aspect. Otherwise, if you are playing solo queue and you do want to just play for one shots, you want to play to hard put Vayne behind, then going Ghostblade is a great item into items like the Profane, Cleaver, or even like Sherelda. It kind of depends what you prefer really, but whatever items on the screen right now, these are all great and I do recommend them. Now moving on, our next range matchup, which is a mage champion, is Vladimir. So Vladimir is similar to Kayle, it's similar to Nasus in a way. This champion can outscale you, but more than often, I think this matchup is more of a challenging matchup per se. So it's not so much that it's hard, but it's the fact that you're kind of on a timer. You want to make sure that you're doing enough in your time in laning phase to really put Vladimir behind. So obviously playing the wave on your side of the map, abusing his W cooldown just like Gnar with his own E is very crucial in being able to get great trades against him. So for instance, the wave is pushed on your side, Renekton will try to dash into Vladimir. Vladimir is forced to pull right after. After that happens, you can dash back in, you can W, you can like R, Q, whatever you want to do, right? You can either all in off that timer, you can burst him down and then disengage. Your E timer comes up a lot more quickly than Vladimir's W, so after that point, you're waiting for your E to come back up, you dash back in, you hard trade Vladimir. At that point, you can usually get your kill angle, or you can burn all of his summoners and just try to freeze him out or dive him if you're shoving in the wave. So yeah, I think Vladimir is not really difficult if you can just play wave states and you can just play off like ability timings. It's just more or less the fact that can you do enough? And Vladimir will always try and rush boots against you. And just like Kayle, the matchup does change quite dramatically once she does rush boots. So obviously as Renekton, we want to rush boots as well. And we still have a lot of base damage to really deal enough damage to Vladimir. We can also rush Briar Rune King as well, which does counter his health scaling. And it also does allow us to have burst damage as well in being able to deal with Vladimir. Now, I don't know if we need Briar Rune King per se directly into Vladimir, but I do find it to be like the best consistent strategy for pulling him behind. The only struggle that I do have is that when he does come to mid game, I can be a lot weaker. So obviously I need to then build like a more of a tanky item second. Or if I'm able to as well, I can just go more damage items and just try to play to keep killing Vladimir and try to keep snowballing my lead. In terms of items and rune, PTA I think is a great rune into Vladimir, obviously as well to amplify your ignite damage to snowball against him. And being able to go Briar Rune King as well, you do also increase the Briar Rune King percentage damage from the press the attack activation. So Briar Rune King does remain a really solid option in doing so. In terms of other items as well, I do think Eclipse and Stridebreaker are pretty good options as well. But overall, I would say Briar Rune King is my item of choice in this matchup. And I do find it to be the most consistent in being able to stop Vladimir. Moving on, we now have Volibear. So Volibear, I would say, is a skill matchup. Mainly due to the fact that the main skill element of playing against a Volibear is trying to use your W onto his E. Volibear will most often try to Q into you, W, and then he'll try and land his E on top of you. If Renekton's patient enough, he will use his Empowered W on the shield. And at that point, Renekton can then use the rest of his kit to deal the damage he needs and then disengage with his E2 or E1. And following on from that as well, I do also think Renekton, as long as he's like trying to avoid Volibear's W2 and trying to also bait out the Q with his like movements, trying to walk in and out and then using his dashes to space away. I don't think Renekton really has a problem in this matchup. Level 1 as well, Renekton can also get wave prior and get level 2 before Volibear if he doesn't give him too much respect. A lot of Renekton players typically make the mistake of letting Volibear hit minions level 1 to build his passive up. And right after that, Volibear then is able to get level 2, and then he tries to impose his will onto his target. So instead, if Renekton gets level 2, Renekton can take W, he can also like break his shield if Voli tries to commit fire against him. And just like that, I also find it a lot more consistent in getting a better start against Volibear by obviously doing this. And the rest of the points in the lane, as long as I'm just like following my own fundamentals and my mechanics of the matchup, I don't really see myself having a problem with Volibear. Renekton's damage is just way too much, and once you do get items like Eclipse, Briar Rune King, and you do have like a rune like Conqueror even, I do feel like this can be a ton of damage for Volibear to really deal with. You can also get items like Black Cleaver and Stridebreaker, which also makes you a really great bruiser, and you do also have the stats to really stat check him. And going a playstyle 2 like WMAX is also very helpful, as you're able to get more consistent Ws off in a 1v1, which takes away Volibear's own strengths of having lower cooldowns, with the fact that you have higher burst damage at a more consistent rate. The next matchup that I will briefly talk about as well, which I find is to be very easy, is Xin Zhao. So Xin Zhao top lane does appear sometimes, as it's like more of an off-meta like cheese type pick where he will try to fight you level 1 and 2. But most often, if Renekton takes Conqueror and he is just like playing more consistent with Q start into gain his level 2 before Xin Zhao, I find that playing into Xin is just very easy and very straightforward. So not much to really say. It's just obviously being aware of his EQ trades. Once you are level 3, you are going to have the damage to really obviously take over in the laning phase, and you will be able to kill him at will. So I will just say, obviously, this matchup is very easy if you play against it, and I do highly recommend you to pick Renekton as well, if that is a pick that you are seeing. In terms of items and runes, nothing really changes here, just like same stuff as usual. Can build whatever you want into this category of matchups. My item would be Eclipse, like as an item of choice, as Xin Zhao won't be able to really get any damage onto us. And going a WMAX playstyle as well does also hinder Xin Zhao, completely useless. Following on from that, a pick that I also forgot to talk about in the W category is Warwick. So Warwick is a skill matchup, I would say. This matchup got a lot easier with all the changes done to Warwick not too long ago. And the fact that Season 16, I do think benefits Renekton a lot more, does help him get his items a lot quicker in being able to snowball. And as long as you're able to like play patiently off your cooldowns, you're not overcommitting into fighting him and obviously using your W before he barriers, I think Warwick can be relatively easy. Now, obviously Warwick can be very annoying in the fact that if someone's low, you just get a ton of stats in that being a thing. But as long as you're playing your Qs and you're obviously pressing W and then disengaging right after, you stun him. That is also a great strategy to play. Buying an item like Executioners completely counters him too, and I do highly recommend it. If you want to put Warwick behind consistently and also stop him from getting really lucky trades where he's able to live on low health, Eclipse will help you apply the healing shred that you need. And when you do get level 6 as well, your ultimate stats are too much for him to really deal with. Within the mid to late game too, Warwick does fall off a cliff. He doesn't really achieve anything, as it is more of a laning centered pick. So as long as you are not like really giving him kills and you are just playing consistent, you're playing off your jungler, you're playing off not trading heavily into his W, and maybe if Warwick is trying to like, just fight you, you can try and burst him down when he's on low health with your W or Q combo or something of that nature. Overall, that's practically all there really is to say about it. In terms of items, if you are dominating, Eclipse with a WMAX feels completely insane into this matchup. Warwick can't really get any fights that he wants against you. You can also go Black Cleaver too, just so you get more cooldown reduction, which will help you get your abilities up more faster, while being a lot more tankier to deal with. And in terms of runes as well, I think Conqueror is just like a great choice, obviously. I think it's way better than PTA, as you're able to keep it up more consistently in this matchup. And that's all there really is to say about Warwick. It's a matchup that, like, you kind of need to see, like, how someone plays before you kind of get an understanding. So, the next matchup that I also forgot to talk about in the W category was Wukong. Wukong is, I would probably say a very easy matchup. Now, I could bump this up to easy because he actually is a top lane pick. But to be honest with you, this champion is just completely trash into Renekton. So, outside of him having a good level 1 and 2 with his EQ combo, if you do just obviously play to auto-queue him back, and you're playing to obviously chill and get level 3, I do think Renekton will just start dominating at that point. A very underrated thing about this matchup as well is that Wukong's clone counts as a champion. So when Wukong is fighting you and he does use his W on top of you, you can actually end up healing even more with your Q. So if you have empowered Q up, you can get a lot of health back in those trades, and Wukong loses a lot of value in using his W. Another thing as well is that Renekton's damage and just combos is so infuriating for Wukong to really deal with. Wukong's overall mana issues are a giant problem too in being able to outtrade Renekton, as Renekton can just out-sustain with Q and going things like even Second Wind if he wants to, or even just D-Blade and like potions. A lot of it is just way too much for Wukong to really deal with. Furthermore as well, I think in this matchup, like once you do get level 6, Renekton does just auto-win as well. And I do find this very consistent too, where I've had games where I've died twice to Wukong just by being an idiot. And then when I do get level 6 and I'm playing my Fury correctly with my empowered Q, and I'm using my abilities more correctly too, I find myself then just completely hard winning against Wukong, even if he has like some items against me. The only thing you need to really consider about the Wukong matchup that might be a bit problematic is that Wukong's flanks and engagers are actually pretty good. He can W to like stealth and then walk in, and then within like a fight, like looking at your carry, he can E then ult. And doing so as well, he can just like apply knockup, and apply CC for his teammates, helping him get a really good engage. Now, obviously, if we're Renekton, we're going to try to obviously keep this into account. We're going to try and protect our carries by peeling him off of them. We're going to try and like slow him or stun him, whatever we can do really to prevent him from getting those combos off. But if we've also played lane good enough as well, and we have used our champion correctly, Wukong shouldn't really have the damage or really the stats to survive in a fight. So most often when he is trying to do this, when you're having a good game, Wukong just kind of falls over and instantly dies. So yeah, not much to really say about this champion. Just the fact that it's really bad design. Definitely needs some buffs in my opinion, or rework. In terms of items and builds, Conqueror I think is really good due to the fact that your stats just completely outstat him, and having Conqueror helps aid that even further. Items like Eclipse can be very good in blocking his EQ damage. Going W max is also very helpful as you're able to stun him consistently and win harder fights when it comes to playing against him in side lane. So yeah, that's practically all there is to really say about it. So there's the rest of the items on the screen. Don't really need to explain much more into detail. You can go Black Cleaver obviously as well, which I find is also really great because obviously you're countering his armor passive, and also your stats are just way too high for him to really deal with. Now it's time to talk about Yasuo and Yone. So I would say Yasuo is probably a very easy matchup. Now I only say that with a bit of hesitation because Yasuo, compared to a lot of other champions, can kind of deal with Renekton pretty well because he will get Blind and Ruin King. He can use his dashes to kind of outmaneuver Renekton really well if he knows what he's doing. But more than often, even if Yasuo is Faker himself or Pazang, like whoever it may be, Renekton is just a hard counter. Now, when you get level 6, that is practically where the matchup is just brain dead easy. Like, if you were losing before, if Yasuo did cheese you with Exhaust, if he did try to impose his level 1 onto you, all you need to do is get Played Steel Caps. All you need to do is just get level 6. And just like that, you'll start out-training him even when he's like 2 kills ahead of you. Obviously, as I just mentioned, his level 1 is definitely really good. So you want to try and like sidestep as much as you can. You want to try and obviously play for level 2. Yasuo most often try to poke and try to all-in you down with lethal tempo. So don't try and get too deeply invested in walking into him because that is his overall window in being able to kill you. So as long as you're playing with that caution, you are playing off trying to avoid that situation, you shouldn't really have any problems. And by hitting level 3, the matchup just becomes really easy. You can obviously E in, you can proc his shield easy, you can use your W to shred his shield, which I actually think is a little bit bugged sometimes. Sometimes you should be able to instantly shred his shield, but what I find that ends up happening is that it kind of removes damage or something like that. It feels like I don't do enough damage in that frame. So instead, I just recommend EQing in, get his passive, and once you do have like the Fury, you just like get his bone plating, you wait for it to go, and then you obviously impale W right after. Following on from that, you just kind of win the trade, and the next time you have your abilities back up, you should just be able to kill him with your abilities being back up. Now, fast forward back to level 6, obviously, at that point, you're just kind of winning every trade. Yasuo can't really do anything towards you. As a pick as well, you do a lot more as a champion, being a bruiser top laner, in comparison to a mid lane fighter such as Yasuo. So there's not much else that really needs to be said. If Yasuo is trying to fight, you can just lock him down with your W. It is practically very easy to kill him, and quite most often when you are playing Renekton to Yasuo, he's probably going 0-20 most of the time. So this matchup is probably even easier than Kayn, honestly, if you get past level 3. So yeah, I think that's all there really is to say about Yasuo. You can build anything that's on the screen right now. You can go PTI or Conqueror. It is completely preference. For me, myself, I think going Eclipse is the best item of choice, followed by Cleaver. Which now leads us into explaining his brother, Yone. Yone is also a very easy matchup. In fact, it's even easier than Yasuo because Yone, while he does have some little mechanics he can abuse to make the matchup easier, I think the fact that he doesn't get his shield right away is a really big hindrance in his own ability. Yasuo level 1 can kill Renekton, but Yone level 1 cannot kill Renekton because if Renekton takes Conqueror, he takes Q, Renekton will have way too much upfront damage to really deal with Yone. And obviously following on from that point too, Renekton can shield break Yone's W a lot easier too, allowing him to easily get snowbally trades and just constantly one-shot him at will. By the level 6 point, obviously compared to Yasuo, Yone does have a lot more playability in his ultimate as he can just E and cast it within fights. So obviously in terms of the Renekton matchup, I don't think Yone ult really does anything for him. It's just only for team fights where it has quite a prevalent use. But when it comes to 1v1 and just overall side laning ability, Renekton with W max also maxed out can just completely dominate Yone, and you can just go items like on the screen right now. Briar, Rune King, Eclipse are both good choices as well. And like I said, you can take Conqueror as well to win fights level 1 if you want to, or just have that raw stat checking power as a bruiser. Or you can also just go press the attack, which does also allow you to have a lot more burstier combos within the matchup. Now next, we have the Yorick matchup. I would put Yorick in the easy column. So Yorick is also a very easy matchup, I would say, but just like Trundle, just like Tryndamere, this champion does rely on split pushing, so trying to obviously manage between his own split push is very important. But when it comes to the landing phase, level 1, he will be stronger with his Q start, so obviously when I play towards getting level 2 and 3. At that point, once reaching level 3, we can just use our Q to easily wave clear his ghouls down, and we can also get really heavy trades against him. Yorick is practically very useless without his ultimate as well, so when he does have ult up, we don't really want to commit hard fights. However, we can do short trades then disengage out, and as long as we hold our E correctly to avoid being caught in his cage, we shouldn't really have any problems within the matchup. Renekton with ultimate as well is also a lot stronger against Yorick, so if you do have Ignite up and you are trying to go for those all-ins after the burst combo that you do before, you can obviously go for that, and it is quite consistent in being able to kill him. And obviously, like aforementioned, I did say, like, obviously trying to manage a split push is important. You can take someone top lane with good wave clear, or if you're also strong enough as well and you're also fed enough, you can keep sidelining against Yorick and keep perma killing him as well. That also does work pretty well in my experience. And I don't think there's really much else to say in this matchup. It's practically just a matter of like trying to avoid his E's, like try not to take too much damage from his ghouls, and just playing off your ultimate cooldown really, and that's like where you're going to get a lot more power. And going Q max is pretty good, I would say. You are able to heal and poke out his minions a lot easier. And in terms of itemization, you can go things even like Ravenous Hydra if you want to just out-sustain him and just have a lot more healing against the Yorick. You can go items like Black Cleaver too, which helps you stick onto Yorick a lot easier, on top of having also Eclipse, which gives you a lot more trading power. And in terms of runes as well, I think Conqueror is obviously the rune of choice here. When you do get those level 6 fights, having Conqueror up is a really big stat check into being able to fight Yorick, and it does give you the additional AD needed to out heal him. Furthermore, I do think Yorick is pretty easy and kind of falls in the same line as these matchups. Now, nearly finishing off, we're going to have Zaheen. Zaheen, I probably will say, is easy. Now, Zaheen kind of can feel like a very easy matchup, but the thing is, this champion does have some pretty sneaky trading patterns, which you can kind of leverage a good fight into Renekton. But just like a Yone Yasuo matchup, I do find that if you do die to Zaheen, it is pretty consistent that you can just get your level 6, and once you do get your level 6, you will have the power to kind of stat check him and 1v1 him. And now that's obviously as well with the help of WMAX. I find WMAX very important as well in this matchup, as you're able to constantly apply damage within the fights against him. If you do go Qmax, I feel like Zaheen becomes a lot harder of a matchup because you lack the burst damage needed to burst him down into his passive, or just burst him down before he gets passive. And overall, I think it's just like a matchup that's similar to Ambessa. Like, you kind of wait for Ambessa to dash in, same with Zaheen. Zaheen might try to get Q1 on a minion, he will then EQ onto you, try and W back. So you kind of wait for him to do that, and then you kind of like either buffer your W on his Q2 knockup, or you just kind of like try and dash out before he's able to do that. Or you can also wait till he does his combo and then return your damage back to help you out trade him. A very underrated thing about Zaheen that I do notice in my games too is that Zaheen likes to skirmish quite a lot. So when it comes to kind of like playing against Zaheen too, you need to use a lot of pings to kind of tell your teammates where he is, because Zaheen is really good at coming back in a game. So if you are like playing into him and he's like 0-5, he can easily just enter a fight and just use his ultimate and use his overall kit to help him sneak out kills. So obviously in those situations, you want to hard ping them, try and like get them to respect Zaheen. And if he's unable to get the kills that he needs, Zaheen won't really be able to do anything within the game. In terms of items, if you're hard winning, I think Bloody Rune King is a very solid option into him, as you're able to have the burst damage to consistently put him behind. Eclipse is also another great item too that I find to be very good into him, as you can block his damage with the shield. On top of the fact that your WMAX and heavy training playstyle is also too much for him to really sustain against. Oddly enough too, I do like to go Black Cleaver into my matchups, but when I do go Black Cleaver into this one, I do feel like Zaheen is still very strong. So I think instead, as long as you're building damage items, you shouldn't really have a problem in being able to play this matchup. Conqueror as well is also a very good rune in my opinion, as you're playing for those mid to long trades eventually after level 6. And just like a little other note too, as long as you just don't blow your cooldown into Zaheen's ult, you shouldn't really have a problem in this matchup, and you should be able to dominate him most of the time. And also against Zaheen, I did forget to mention, Execution is also a very good item in being able to deal with his overall healing. And finally, I think the last matchup that I'm going to add from this tier list that I think is relevant to talk about is Zac, and Zac will fall under the easy category. Zac is interesting because it is like an off-meta pick that is played from time to time, and it is a very good pick at being very cheesy with his sustain and his overall damage that he's able to deal with his W. Now, Renekton's really good because Renekton does already a lot of burst damage, and as long as you're like denying his blobs by walking onto them, and you are using your wave clear effectively to poke him out and obviously shove in waves when it's necessary, Zac can't really do anything. And even when you do get him into his blob form as well, Renekton's wave clear with his Q, E, and ult does allow you to easily kill his blobs and give you less of a problem when it comes to 1v1s. A big thing that can help this matchup too, if you are kind of weak-sided or like at least you're in a losing situation against Zac, is actually buying healing reduction. Like having the healing reduction does kind of lower a lot of his overall damage and his overall playability. So if you do have Ignite, obviously Ignite can be good, but if you do think you need a little bit more consistency in having the healing reduction the whole time, Executioners can be very good at having that. By level 6 as well, Renekton is a lot stronger as well, so most often you will be able to fight Zac at will, and as long as you're avoiding getting hit by his Q2 and also being knocked up by his Z, Renekton should really have no problems within this matchup. The only thing to really note about Zac in the mid to late game is that Zac has some really great engages, so something that you can do, obviously, is try to spam ping your teammates a lot of his whereabouts. If Zac is missing in the lane, he's most likely looking for a play mid lane, so trying to either get wards down to prevent him from getting those roams off can be very important, or at least getting those pings off is also very relevant for your team as well, in being able to spot him out. And as long as you're playing the vision game correctly and you are also able to deny him of getting those opportunities, Zac as a pick will be very useless. And if you're able to peel your teammates from being caught by him as well, Zac will just have no playability in being able to be relevant as a pick. And in terms of runes, I do like going Conqueror in this matchup. I just like the overall damage and healing I'm able to get when fighting a Zac. And when it comes to items, Blight Rune King can be good when you're ahead. When he does come down to playing as a bruiser and trying to get good trades against him, Eclipse and Black Cleaver both feel good as a first item. And with all that said, that is practically it when it comes to my tier list. Now, I may have been able to add some more champions, but to be quite honest with you, I think I kind of picked every champion out here. Also, I don't know what the fuck this champion is. If someone could tell me in the comments, I don't know what the fuck this thing is here. I've been looking at that the whole time I'm trying to pick out champions. I'm just completely confused, but hey, doesn't really matter. But in terms of other things, if you are curious on how I play against them, it is all linked and talked about within my spreadsheet. And if you do want any more information on matchups or just how to play Renekton in general, I recommend checking out my spreadsheet. It's completely free, and if you do want to know a little bit more information, I highly recommend that. Yeah, guys, this video was hard to make. It was a complete mouthful. I hope I explained my points very coherently. I hope I explained everything that you needed to know on a baseline level, and I just hope that you enjoyed the video too. If you did enjoy like me just going over like making a tier list and making like and having these explanations, and make sure to leave a like and also just comment on the video, as it does help the overall engagement and it does help my video perform a lot better. I don't know if I'll make another one of these videos. This video took ages to make. I think even like 3 hours long, and my throat is just dead. I had to take multiple retakes and I had to take multiple breaks while trying to record this. So yeah, I hope you guys know how much effort I do put into these videos, because I do want to be like the best source of Renekton content. So I hope I'm able to do that, because I am going to be trying to make even better content just from this alone. Yeah, guys, with all that said, thank you very much for watching today. If you want to learn more or you want to see more of my videos, make sure to leave a like, make sure to subscribe on the video. Make sure to check out my Discord as well, as I'm active there and you can ask me any questions that you do have. With all that said, I am dead. I know I keep on stalling the end of the video, but thank you guys for watching. It really means the world to me. Thank you for also hitting 15,000 subscribers. I didn't really say it enough. I didn't really make a video on it, so I hope this kind of makes up for it as well. Hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you next time. So peace out, and have a good one.